He was once the strongest hunter in the world, the first SSS rank, until he was betrayed and killed without even understanding why. But instead of ending there, he goes back in time with all his powers sealed. And now the system forces him to work as nothing more than a dungeon cleaner. It sounds ridiculous, but that's where the real game begins. Because every bit of filth hides secrets no one ever noticed. And while everyone looks down on this job, he uses it to regain his power and get closer to the truth behind his death. And without further ado, let's get into today's video. The story begins with someone calling out to the hunter, Kim Jun-woo, and asking how he feels after becoming the world's first SSS rank hunter. The person comments that he reached the top in just 1 year after entering rank 1, and also asks if it's true that he received an offer from the International Hunters Association. They add that this dungeon is of extremely high difficulty and ask how he feels before entering, as well as whether he has any advice for newer hunters. Meanwhile, the protagonist thinks that it's been a long time since he was last sent on an operation, even though he doesn't remember mentioning that. He notices that the front area of the dungeon is full of reporters, since this is an opportunity they can't miss. At that moment, Kim apologizes and says he just wants to focus on clearing the dungeon. He thinks that, judging by their reaction, they were already expecting that answer, since at least they'd be able to get his voice on TV. He decides to give them that small gift. Then Jun states that there's one thing he can say for sure. The team always puts the safety of civilians first, and that won't change no matter what happens. He ends by saying, "See you next time." People comment that, as expected from rank 1, he's different, and that even with some controversies, he's still the best hunter. The protagonist thinks that this will leave a good impression on the public, until someone calls out to him and asks if he has anything to say about the assault incident involving a janitor. Kim turns and asks what he's talking about. The reporter replies that it's the case where he assaulted a worker who was cleaning the dungeon, and says he heard that Kim even threw him against a wall. Jun asks what he means by that. The boy responds that he understands Kim might pretend not to know, but he has received a lot of information and is also a friend of the victim. He adds that it seems the world's #1 rank is truly something else. Since he can beat someone old enough to be his father and not even a single article comes out about it, immediately people start whispering. The protagonist looks at everyone, walks away, and says it's nothing but an unpleasant rumor. The boy wishes him good luck in the dungeon, which leaves Kim quite irritated. In the Republic of Korea, the organization responsible for managing the supernatural dimension, simply called the Association, was created to protect the country and civilians from dungeons and the monsters that emerged. It gathers talented individuals with special abilities and organizes 4 teams. Among them is the Operations Team, which deals directly with monsters. In other words, the Hunters. Operations Team 1 is considered elite with a 100% success rate in dungeons and composed only of high-rank members. Its leader is Jun. However, news about him begins to spread because of the assault incident inside the dungeon, and people start attacking him. The protagonist looks at these posts irritated and wonders what the hell is going on. The driver asks what the problem is after they cleared the dungeon so well. Kim asks if she really doesn't know the reason and reminds her that he told her not to let that incident leak. She replies that she didn't. Kim then asks where the story came from, since the internet is in chaos. The driver says she checked the source and mentions Mispatch and Central News, but explains that it wasn't a journalist, but an ordinary citizen. Jun finds it strange and asks how someone who isn't even a reporter managed to find out. She answers that it seems to be the son of the dungeon cleaning team leader, Park Jun-tae, the one involved in the incident. The protagonist becomes even more irritated and says, the problem is that this isn't the only case. The driver explains that witnesses from other incidents are starting to come forward, encouraged by public opinion, and that the situation will likely get worse. She advises him to stay home for now, since he has nothing scheduled, and to treat it like a vacation. Kim asks if she knows how much he hates any bastard who gets in his way. Lee says she does. Jun tells her to fix this quickly because if it grows any further, his reputation will be destroyed. She says she'll do her best. Kim responds that he's not talking to a machine and asks what the association leader said. Lee says he hasn't said anything yet because he's busy with an international patrol case and is probably waiting for things to calm down. Jun tells her to stop joking and says that when that man says nothing, it means he doesn't want to get involved and might even expel him soon. He adds that after everything he's done, if that happens, he won't just sit still. Lee asks if that's so, and Woo questions if she's a robot that only says, "Is that so?" Lee says there won't be any problem, that even with public opinion and chaos, his rank won't change, and the protagonist replies that's obvious. Kim crosses his arms and thinks that after finishing the dungeon and reading those articles, his anger reached its peak. His team members panicked and stopped him from going after the reporter, who he later found out was the son, and even so, he reluctantly got into the car heading to the association. Even though he had calmed down compared to before, his anger hadn't disappeared. Jun remembers the time when he was praised as the youngest hunter in the country, the first S-rank hunter, the national rank 1, and the world rank 1. Woo thinks that years of achievements have become useless, so it would be strange not to be angry about it and wonders how they dare stand in his way. In the present, inside the car, Lee asks why he did that, and the protagonist replies that he already said that bastard grabbed his collar first. Lee then asks why he grabbed the other man's collar and says she knows he already doesn't like the cleaning team much, but this is the first time he's directly clashed with them. Kim says he doesn't know, that he barely remembers, and says that once they get to the association, he wants that Park, whatever his name is. Lee replies that it's the team leader, Park Jun-tae, and Jun tells her to bring that idiot to him because before things get even messier, he needs to settle things with him. Lee says she understands. The protagonist comments that everyone is so busy trying to screw over someone who's doing well, until Kim suddenly widens his eyes and tells her to look ahead. They are both shocked to see a truck coming straight at them, about to crash. Jun uses his learned skill, Time Exceed, activating it and preventing the car from colliding with the truck. The protagonist thinks that if he had been a second late, he would have painted the asphalt with blood. That truck didn't even try to stop, and he asks if that bastard is drunk. Lee, still shaken, says she doesn't know. Kim gets out of the car, walks forward, and asks who that idiot is, when suddenly a device approaches him to restrain him. Jun realizes it's a device used to capture people with supernatural powers. He can't move, and soon he hears the sound of a vehicle approaching, which makes him even more desperate. He tries but realizes he can't use his abilities. The truck runs him over, leaving him severely injured. Another truck comes from the front and crushes him, causing a terrible explosion. Someone stands in the middle of the flames, it's Jun, saying that today really is a terrible day while asking who dares challenge him. Several soldiers with shields and weapons appear and begin firing together. The protagonist, even injured, faces them and thinks this was an unexpected, carefully planned trap. Any ordinary hunter would have been finished without even being able to fight back, but he is someone who has faced monsters thousands of times in dungeons where life and death always walk side by side. That's who he is, so he won't lose his life like this. That's what he thought. But in reality, Kim is kneeling, surrounded by soldiers with a blue light weapon, until he sees Titan, a supernatural weapon used in dungeons. The soldier points it at his head and fires. The system notifies that critical damage has been detected in the lungs, heart, liver, brain, and other organs. Heart failure confirmed. Calculating resurrection probability, elimination confirmed. Something moves rapidly, Jun's body begins to fall, and more system notifications appear stating that, due to the elimination, the requirement to obtain the secret skill has been fulfilled. Secret skill Karma. Due to the secret skill, he is returning 10 years into the past. After returning, his occupation will be determined according to the karma of his past life. Assigning occupation. Assignment complete. A young man feels relieved. In that place, members of the cleaning team are gathered and everyone must hurry as they only have 45 minutes until the next dungeon. Someone must clean the area since it wasn't fully sterilized, and Wu needs to hurry to the monster incinerator. The system notifies that his job is within the association managing the supernatural dimension of the Republic of Korea and that he has been assigned to the dungeon cleaning team. The protagonist says this job is exhausting. Kim remembers how he was killed, wakes up startled, says it was a terrible dream, asks how long he slept, and comments that his body feels stiff. Jun looks around in shock and asks where he is. The place is a 26 square meter studio, worse than a pigsty. Obviously, it's not his house. It's smaller than his own bathroom. He wonders if it could be Director Lee's place, but quickly dismisses the idea, thinking she wouldn't let him in even if the world were ending. The protagonist questions where the hell he is, until Kim notices a system notification saying elimination was confirmed and that the condition to acquire the secret skill has been fulfilled. Jun finds it strange and asks if it just said elimination was confirmed, commenting that this isn't a comic. He looks in the mirror and realizes it's his face from 10 years ago, exactly Kim Jun-woo at 28. He opens the system, which informs him that the secret skill is karma, and begins analyzing its effects. The condition has been met, and he was sent 10 years into the past because of this skill, which cannot be arbitrarily cancelled. Kim concludes it wasn't a dream. He really died. New notifications appear stating that a new job has been assigned due to the skill's effect. Jun gets irritated thinking that after becoming a hunter at 18, he reached rank A at 28, being ranked 22 in Korea and 525 in the world. If it were just a 10-year regression, he should still be a rising hunter at the center of attention. But the assigned job is dungeon cleaner. The protagonist becomes furious, questioning how the great Kim is now cleaning dungeons. More notifications appear about karma. The conditions to cancel it are clear. He must become the Secretary General of the International Supernatural Association within 5 years. If he succeeds, the skill will automatically cancel and he will return to the moment before his death. If he fails, he will be completely erased, with a time limit of 4 years, 11 months, 29 days, and 48 seconds. Kim repeats the condition in his mind, becomes Secretary General in 5 years, and realizes that if he succeeds, he returns to his previous life. But if he fails, he will remain a mere janitor until he disappears. he concludes it makes no sense. The International Supernatural Association oversees all associations worldwide, and the Secretary General holds power far greater than the President of the United States, essentially the most powerful position on the planet. Jun thinks that even when he was the world's first SSS rank hunter, he couldn't achieve that position, so how could he do it in just 5 years? He decides it's impossible and says he'll just ignore it, asking who would care about karma. Still, he reflects that the only way to return to his previous life is by achieving that position, so maybe it would be better to live again as a hunter, like before. If he still had his abilities, he would have no trouble returning to the top. However, when he checks, he realizes all his abilities are sealed, making him question what kind of absurd skill karma is. Suddenly, the system sends another notification saying he acquired a new skill. Jun gets excited for a moment until he sees that the skill is passive learning, called Cleaning Obsession, whose effect is making him start cleaning. The protagonist immediately dislikes it. Some noises echo as Kim lies on the bed and reflects that after dying, he woke up 10 years in the past, dropped from an SSS rank hunter to a dungeon cleaner in an instant, had all his abilities sealed, and saw all his life's achievements disappear. He wonders what he should do now if he's really going to work as a cleaner. He quickly rejects the idea, telling himself that he still has the pride of an SSS rank hunter, which is the only thing he has left. More importantly, he needs to find out who is responsible for his death, because it clearly wasn't the work of an ordinary troop. Jun begins to suspect it could have been a private guild or someone within the association, and if it's neither, then who could it be? At that moment, the phone rings. On the other end, a man introduces himself as Park, the team leader, and asks if he's busy or can come to work that day. The protagonist finds the name strange and tries to remember if he knows someone called Park. The man says it's been an hour since his report time, and asks if he's not feeling well since the last dungeon was a bit tough. Kim connects everything and realizes that because of karma, his assigned job really is dungeon cleaner. Park says he admits the last dungeon was tough, but today won't be so bad. The guys nearby comment that they already said that troublemaker ran away because it was difficult, that there are always some idiots who quit on the first day, and wonder if he has any idea how many people are waiting for him. Jun thinks that no matter his current state, those cleaners are clearly looking down on him, reinforcing that he really lost his life. Park asks everyone to be quiet, saying he might have had a good reason, and that if he's struggling, he can just rest. He adds that if something happens next time, it would be good to notify in advance, and says he can text that number and save the contact as team leader Park Juntae. The protagonist is surprised and asks what his name was again. Park says it's hard to remember but repeats that it's Park Juntae, tells him to rest well and to come next time if possible. Kim then says he's going to work now. Inside the bus, Jun sits and thinks that he was surprised to realize there weren't any decent clothes at home, and even more when he left and didn't see his car. With no option, he tried calling a taxi but realized that he didn't even have coins in his wallet. Thinking that Kim now rides the bus only makes him more irritated. He concludes that he's living a completely different life, meaning his relationship with the world has also changed, and that the incident where he was violent with Park hasn't happened here yet, so for now, there's no connection between them. However, if it was really Park Jun-tae who killed him before, then everything changes, because something is clearly off. Someone deliberately caused an accident to draw his attention, and there was even an anti-supernatural device prepared to block his abilities. Moreover, the weapon used against him wasn't ordinary. Titan, an anti-monster and supernatural suppression firearm, is first class, with extremely advanced technology and a very high cost, something a simple dungeon cleaner like Park Jun-tae couldn't possibly obtain. Even so, he considers the possibility that Park hired a professional out of hatred. His son clearly held a grudge. Maybe he just gave the initial push, and Kim should have realized that when he was still calm. In his memory, Park tells him to leave, and the protagonist asks who he is, prompting Park to introduce himself. At that moment, Kim feels like he's heard that name before and asks if he has something to discuss with him. Park replies that he heard Kim suggested reducing the number of high-level janitors, and since they're already short-staffed, reducing even more will make things worse. Jun asks why he came directly to him, saying he only made a suggestion and has no authority, and that the decision belongs to the regulation team. Park counters that everyone knows his level of influence, that his words move the association, and that he doesn't even need to lift a finger for people to get fired. He insists the numbers can't drop further and asks him to reconsider. The protagonist thinks he expected his suggestion to reach them, but didn't think they would come in person, and realizes that just from Park's expression, continuing the conversation would be irritating for both of them. Kim then asks if he knows that lizards, when they lose their tails, use an extremely inefficient defense method, yet still do it without hesitation when in danger, and asks why that happens. Park replies that it's because that's how they survive. Jones says that even if it's inefficient and painful, it's the only way to save their lives, the last resort. Park tries to respond, but the protagonist interrupts and says they are not the tail, asking if that's what he meant. He continues, saying that every human likes to believe they are necessary to the world and questions whether that's really true. He then reveals that the association is facing serious financial problems and will adjust elite hunters' salaries. Park asks if that's because they are affecting his pay. Kim replies that the association's priority is protecting civilians from dungeons and monsters, and that work is done by hunters like him, so if they're not properly paid, who would do it? He concludes he had no choice but to resort to the last option. Park says that's absurd, that there's a limit to what he can do. The protagonist replies that they don't even do that much. Park counters that he doesn't even know what they do, and Kim coldly replies that they clean. What else do they do? Ending by saying they are the ones who will decide how many people get fired. Park says he also takes pride in his work, and June replies that, yes, that's nice, but says he should have done this years ago, only didn't because of a comrade, and since it seems Park understands, he says he's leaving. Park insists that Kim himself said the association's priority is protecting citizens and reminds him that they are also citizens, begging him to reconsider. The protagonist approaches, visibly irritated, saying he thought he had said enough for him to understand, but apparently it wasn't enough. He continues, saying they should be grateful because they're not the ones risking their lives fighting like him, while they earn money cleaning safely, filling their stomachs thanks to hunters, and asks what more he wants, accusing him of acting like a parasite. At that moment, Park grabs his collar and asks what he just said, but Kim throws him against the wall and stares at him, saying it's just drama even though Park is clearly hurt. Then Jun calls his boss Lee and tells her to deal with that parasite, saying not to let him get involved in this kind of issue. In the present, they stand before a yellow-level dungeon, and the boss this time is the Foxtrot Centipede. The protagonist has already participated in that dungeon when he was 28, which makes him realize he truly returned 10 years to the past. Park approaches and comments that he came, while Kim thinks that he's finally in front of the one who left him in that state. Park says he knew he would come and asks why he seems distracted. June observes that he's just an ordinary middle-aged man, around 50, wearing a cheap uniform, exactly as he remembered, and doesn't seem like someone capable of killing another person. The protagonist comments that he arrived quickly and asks if he had breakfast, saying he didn't say he would come, but you can feel his sincerity just by looking at him. The janitor Han Sung-hyo says it's obvious he came because he got caught trying to leave. Im Hwai-jong complains that last time, this guy said he couldn't do anything and really didn't do anything. Moon So-yeon says 4 people are already enough and asks why they're trying to bring someone else. Park ends the discussion saying that's enough. Now that everyone is there, they should start, and asks how much time is left. They reply 40 minutes, reminding him that's because he was an hour late. Kim thinks they're quite rude. Park says there's nothing to be done and they should go before being criticized again. Then he hands the equipment to June and says the size should fit. The protagonist finds it strange when he sees a gas mask. Park asks if everything is okay or if there's a problem. Kim says it's not exactly a problem, but asks what a dungeon cleaner actually does. The association that manages the supernatural dimension of the Republic of Korea has 4 main teams. The control team responsible for monitoring dungeon appearances and gathering information. The support team, which produces and maintains weapons and items and provides general assistance. The operations team, composed of hunters who eliminate monsters. And finally, the dungeon cleaning team. The cleaners enter the dungeon, and Park asks if they're already disinfecting. Hwai replies yes, but the corridor is larger than expected, so the product might not be enough. Park instructs them to spray more broadly, tells Sang to check the boss room's location, and asks Yeon to check the internal gas level, reminding them the boss is large and will take time to dismantle, so they need to hurry. The protagonist watches all this and thinks that the cleaning team's work, which he didn't know before, seems excessively busy, and wonders why they're pretending to be in such a rush. Then he walks in another direction. Park asks where he's going, warning that it's dangerous to walk alone in that dungeon. June replies that he himself said they were going to the boss room. Park agrees but says that's why he needs to stay close to the group, because the room is in another direction. The protagonist says it's that way. Park is surprised while Sang holds his head. Mun says if he doesn't want to go, he should just say it. Hui, already irritated by the lack of time, asks why he wants to make things worse and suggests ignoring him. Sang says that's the map provided by the control team and that you just have to look to know where the boss room is. Kim watches silently while Sang reinforces that a clear dungeon is mapped by the hunters responsible for the operation, so there's no way the map is wrong. Even so, June insists the map is wrong, saying with certainty that it's in the other direction, and comments that the control team barely interacted with him, questioning whether they really work like that. Sang says he's going crazy and asks if that guy is smoking crack, while Park questions how he can be so confident. The protagonist, irritated, replies that he's not confident at all and asks who it was that actually cleared that dungeon. Park gets curious and asks who it was, but Kim thinks it doesn't matter since no one would believe him anyway, so he just tells them to keep moving. As they walk, Jun asks what Park meant when he said they only had 45 minutes, and Park explains that it's the time until the dungeon closes, asking if he's never heard of that before. The protagonist then remembers that after being cleared, dungeons don't disappear immediately, but instead enter a temporary state before reappearing, usually within a certain time frame. Hunters don't worry about this because they leave right after finishing, but it's crucial for the cleanup team. He questions why clean something that's going to disappear, and Park explains that it doesn't really vanish, it just enters a reset interval, and asks what would happen if it reopened filled with piles of monster corpses. Kim says it doesn't sound like a big deal, but Park explains that it would hinder hunters, increasing the chances of them getting lost, and that the gases released by decomposing monsters are highly lethal to humans. He adds that too many bodies would also restrict movement inside the dungeon, directly affecting the efficiency of the next operation. Jun accepts the explanation. Park then says that, in other words, their job is to allow hunters to focus on clearing dungeons safely, saying they can take pride in that because, without them, hunters wouldn't exist. The protagonist thinks that's an exaggeration. Park continues saying the team's main mission is to remove monster corpses, clean up residues left after completion, and ensure no hunter-related information is left behind, mentioning that in some cases they might even rescue hunters, although that has never happened. Kim finds that unlikely since he's never heard of a janitor saving a hunter, but admits the job might not be as useless as he thought. Shortly after, Park says they've arrived, and according to the map, that should be the boss room. Sang enters first, looks around, and says in surprise that it's not there. Jun replies that he already said it wasn't the right place. Kwai comments that it seems he wasn't lying, while Sang asks what happened and what they should do now. They start considering ending the job there and leaving, since there are still 22 minutes left, which they consider enough to avoid criticism. The protagonist interrupts and asks what exactly is enough, and Park replies that it's the remaining work time, questioning whether they shouldn't be using that time to work. Kim then remembers there are still 22 minutes left and mentions the dungeon closing, explaining that a cleared dungeon can take anywhere from a week to a year to reappear. Park concludes that if they take too long, they could end up trapped inside. Joan reacts, saying they must be crazy, and asks if they're really risking their lives just to clean. Park replies that it's always been like this and tells everyone to keep moving. Sang says that if he doesn't like it, he can leave, saying he never expected anything from him anyway, and that they can continue without him, since it's probably his first time in a dungeon, and he must think cleaning isn't important. Moon just stares at him, while the protagonist stands still, thinking that he has 15 years of experience as a hunter and has never failed to clear a single dungeon, which led him to become the world's first SSS rank and the #1 in the global ranking, so no one can question his career in dungeons. He wonders if he's really being looked down on by janitors inside a dungeon, and then states that there's a hidden passage in that room. Sang says this is getting ridiculous, but Kim tells him to shut up and pay attention. He explains that the distance to the boss room is about 500 meters and that, using the shortest route, it would take around 8 minutes, or 5 if they run, saying he'll go ahead, and that if they don't like it, they can leave. They then run through the passage, and when they arrive, everyone is shocked to see that the centipede is actually there, a gigantic monster over 10 meters tall. Sang confirms that it really is the boss room, while the protagonist observes the environment and concludes that there was an intense battle there, estimating that in a group of about 20 hunters, the casualties were likely 5 or 6 people, although they still managed to find the monster's weak point, located in the hollow part of its forehead just above the jaw. Sang says there's no time to waste and tells them to start, asking what he's doing just standing there, saying they can't waste time and that he shouldn't act like an idiot just because they got the boss room wrong. The centipede opens its eyes and rises, and everyone realizes it's still alive, saying that's impossible since the monster should have been cleared. Kim stands still, staring at the creature, thinking this will be complicated without any skills. Suddenly, the centipede collapses to the ground, and Jun wonders if that was just its last breath, questioning what the operations team was doing to not check properly. Hwai sighs in relief and says that was surprising, while the protagonist keeps staring at the monster. Hwai comments that it's his first time seeing a boss and tells him to step back, but Kim doesn't understand. Hui explains that he's looking at it with a strange expression, but it's fine, and that he should step away if he can't touch the monster. Jun finds that odd, asks what the hell he's talking about, and tells him to just hand over the knife. The others get confused and ask what he's doing. The protagonist climbs onto the centipede and says he was the one who said he'd dismantle it, explaining that if they just stab randomly without knowing what they're doing, they'll end up breaking their wrists. He shows that the blade only goes in at segments 3, 6, and 12, and that there's no point trying elsewhere, so they shouldn't waste time. He adds that the nerves might still be reacting, so they should ignore any movement while cutting. Everyone is surprised. Kim asks why they're just standing there and if they're going to keep watching. Park replies no and tells everyone to start. Jun instructs them to insert the knife at the correct angle and lift, asking if they think they can cut just by stabbing randomly. He also warns them not to touch the tail, since many hunters have died from its venom, and not to step on the blood, which isn't poisonous but is extremely sticky. Sang asks if the leader showed him the team file or if he's trying to help the rookie, but Park says no. Sang insists it's impossible for a rookie cleaner to know all that, and Park says that information isn't even in the file. Surprised, Sang asks how he knows all this, but Park says he has no idea either. At that moment, the system sends a notification saying that the passive skill, Cleaning Obsession, is being activated. Shortly after, the dismantling is complete and everyone stops. The protagonist feels a strange sense of relief, but is also annoyed at feeling satisfied with that. Park asks if he's sure it's his first time, and Sang comments that he only gave a little help, which makes Moon question that, saying that in practice he did almost everything. Kim thinks that's absurd since he just cleaned. Choi comments that someone promising has joined the team and that he might just be nervous, and Sang provokes him, asking if he's going to keep mocking. Soon they realize they need to leave as only 5 minutes remain, which is still enough time. They start walking together, and Park says it was easier than expected thanks to Jun. Suddenly, the protagonist notices something strange and wonders if blood is leaking from the bag. Sang asks if he stepped on it after being warned, and Mun says he can't move. Kim downplays the situation, saying it's fine and telling everyone to step back while thinking that blood is extremely adhesive. Even as a hunter, he wouldn't be able to get out of it with brute force, but he knows it's weak to heat, so it should melt easily. Jun tries to use the infernal fire skill, but the system notifies that the skill is unavailable. He then realizes how serious the situation is. Park asks if Hui brought the rope and tells them to tie him up quickly, telling everyone to pull with force. Hui ties him up, they pull, but Jun doesn't move even an inch. They try again, without success. Park then orders him to remove his protective suit. Moon warns that the gas level is high and that it's dangerous. Park argues, asking if she wants everyone to get trapped there. The protagonist, confused, thinks that he's the one stuck, so why would everyone be at risk? He compares the situation to lizards cutting off their tails to survive and wonders why they don't just abandon him. Park approaches and tells him to take off the suit while Kim thinks they're less intelligent than lizards. Park realizes it's not working and orders everyone to leave. Sang asks what he plans to do, and Park says those who can survive should survive. Sang calls that absurd, but Park insists, saying it's an order from the team leader. Sang is shocked to hear that and realizes there are only 10 seconds left. Park then runs to Jun, starts removing his protective suit, and gives him his own. With that, the two manage to break free and run, leaving the blood-covered suit behind. Outside, Sang and the others wait anxiously. Park and the protagonist keep running as the countdown reaches 2, then 1, and finally, 0. Those waiting watch and realize the two made it out in time, feeling relieved and impressed with the team leader. Park smiles, while Kim reflects that he almost lost his life again, this time inside a dungeon without monsters, just while doing a cleaning job. Park asks if he's okay, and Jun says yes, commenting that the gas level was lower than expected, which was a relief. Park says he worked hard on his first dungeon of the day, and that they were lucky, making the protagonist think he almost died, and yet he calls that luck. Jun then asks if he said first dungeon of the day, and Park replies that they're just getting started. Kim asks how many are left, and Park raises 5 fingers, leaving Jun shocked. There are 8 operation teams in the Seoul branch alone, and 96 in the entire country. The association that manages the supernatural dimension has a control team, a hunter support team, and an operations team, and including freelancers, there are about 11,300 registered hunters in Korea. The dungeon cleaning team, however, is completely different, with only 5 teams totaling 25 people. Each team needs to clean about 3.3 dungeons per day, and on bad days, that number can exceed 5 like that day. At night, they comment that it was an unlucky day and suggest having dinner together. Park says that as the leader, he should pay for this kind of thing, but Hui asks how he plans to sustain himself if he always does that. Mun says the salary difference isn't that big and that they can split the bill. Park insists that at least in moments like that, he should keep up appearances and invites Jun as well, saying he's the star of the night and asking if there's anything he wants to eat. Sang tells them to decide quickly because standing around is tiring. The protagonist refuses, surprising everyone. He thinks he doesn't need to build bonds with them and tries to explain that he won't go today, but Park interrupts, saying he doesn't need to worry and that he won't force him. Jun says that's not it and says goodbye. Mun says she'll see him tomorrow. Sang tells him to get home safely, and the protagonist leaves in silence. When he gets home, he lies on the bed and thinks that Park wasn't the one who killed him in his past life, since he doesn't seem like the kind of person who would kill someone out of resentment. Kim starts thinking of possible suspects, remembering Young Kwang, the youngest on the team who always insulted him, whom he fought as if they were going to kill each other, and also Huang Ding from the control team who constantly picked on him. He wonders why so many people would have reasons against him, but soon concludes that there's no point thinking about it now, since whoever killed him is probably someone who, at that time, is still unknown. In the end, he realizes that if he wants revenge, he first needs to get rid of that karma and return to his previous life. And for that, he must become the Secretary General of the International Supernatural Association. The protagonist reflects that if he still had his abilities, he could simply go back to being a hunter or find a way to join the control team. Kim then opens the system, remembering that he didn't manage to analyze it properly earlier, and wonders if there are conditions to unlock his abilities. When he checks, he realizes there are, which means there's no reason to keep being a cleaner. He decides to check these conditions and discovers they're absurd. The annual minimum salary for dungeon cleaners must exceed 60 million won, and the competition rate to join the team must be at least 30 to 1. June is incredulous, asking if that isn't exaggerated and realizing that all the conditions are tied to the cleaning team itself. Irritated, he grabs a crushed bottle and throws it. Then he sits on the bed and stares at the fallen bottle until the system notifies that the passive skill cleaning obsession has been activated. Suddenly, June starts cleaning everything automatically, complaining that the room is dirty and wondering if he didn't clean anything in his past life. He gets even more irritated for not being able to relax as the urge to clean completely takes over. The system then sends another notification stating that a condition has been met after 1 day of work, unlocking the skill super boost. A week passes since he started taking crowded buses every morning and working cleaning dungeons. During that time, he cleaned 25 dungeons, used 60 liters of bleach, and dismantled 30 monsters. Among the unlocked skills is Hyper Boost, which drastically increases movement speed during battle, obtained through the random condition of 1 day of work. The protagonist thinks it's an extremely efficient mobility skill, but that it only becomes truly useful when combined with attack abilities, since its activation condition requires being in battle, meaning it can't even be used for training. Still, Kim concludes it's better than nothing. Honestly, reaching an annual minimum salary of 60 million won or making dungeon cleaning the most desired profession are practically impossible at that time, since cleaning dungeons is considered one of the harshest jobs. Of course, there are some easier conditions, but they're vague and abstract. Among them, the most viable would be increasing the association's interest. If he were still the former SS rank hunter, he could help clear dungeons using knowledge from the next 10 years, which would instantly boost that interest. The problem is that no one would easily believe the words of a simple dungeon cleaner. He then considers contacting former members of his team and building trust little by little. Soon after, he thinks ironically that with over 10,000 hunters in Korea, finding those people would be very easy. Meanwhile, on the bus, the protagonist ends up shouting after realizing he missed his stop, causing the man next to him to tell him to be quiet. In front of the dungeon, Kim finds it strange to see only 2 people and asks why only they are there and if the others are late. Sang fires back, asking who he thinks he is to complain, and explains that they're running low on supplies, so the team leader went to buy more, while Hai took a day off for personal reasons. Jun replies that they should have started 10 minutes ago and questions why they only went to buy materials now, but Sang counters by asking why he arrived late, and Kim admits he missed his stop. Sang smiles and says he brought coffee, and that they can drink while they wait. The protagonist thinks Sang's attitude is almost angelic compared to the first day, and that the fact he hasn't quit yet is already surprising. Even so, Jun insists they go in, but Sang says they're not finished yet. Kim asks finished with what, and Sang replies that the dungeon is still being cleared. The protagonist grumbles, thinking this isn't one of the dungeons he had cleared before, but at most it's a mid-level blue dungeon, not the kind where the clearing time is exceeded. So he wonders why they're having so much trouble and mentally calls them incompetent. Moon doesn't understand what he meant. Kim thinks he can't just go in to help and that they should hurry up, but realizes that thinking like that was a mistake. 30 minutes later, he's already irritated and asks how incompetent they are to take so long, and Mun replies that they're coming out. The hunters begin to exit the dungeon, and Kim observes that they all seem to be rank D, saying that for a blue dungeon, leaving in that state is ridiculous, that they don't deserve the salary they receive and that it's a waste. Moon warns that they might hear him. At that moment, a girl also exits the dungeon, and Jun is surprised when he sees her, recognizing that face, long black hair, and flawless appearance like an actress. It's Minju, who used to be a direct subordinate on his team. He wonders why she's there. Min notices his gaze and asks if he has a problem with her. The protagonist says no and wonders why he had to run into her there, remembering that he had been thinking about looking for his former team, but that she is an exception. She always hated him for no apparent reason, and when he suggested she should retire because of an injury, she insulted him endlessly, not realizing he was trying to help. Her pride was always enormous, although her skills weren't bad. Moon calls him, and Kim asks what it is. She asks if he knows that hunter since he was staring. Jun says no, that she just reminds him of someone he knows. Mun says she understands, commenting that his expression was so threatening, it looked like she was his ex. The protagonist reacts irritably, asking what the hell she's talking about, and Mun apologizes, saying it was just a joke. At that moment, Park arrives and asks what that atmosphere is and if something happened. Kim says it's nothing, but Sang teases him, saying he just ran into his ex. Kim tells him to shut up and asks why they're still standing there, telling them to start working. The dungeon is a blue grade one located in an urban area formed from buildings. Moon asks if he also studied the dungeon before coming, and Jun says he doesn't know much about it, just that the boss is a humanoid monster. Over the past weeks, he's been bombarded with questions because of his vast knowledge about dungeons. Of course, that was an outrageous lie, but interestingly, no one had questioned anything so far. They enter, and Park explains that, as they know, since it's a dungeon in a civilian area, the remains of monsters are not as obvious. So, they need to make sure every corner and crevice is thoroughly cleaned, especially the blood. which tends to accumulate under staircases, asking them to pay extra attention to that and instructing Woo to guide them to the boss room. Still there, Park comments that he doesn't like humanoid monsters because they resemble human corpses too much. In front of them is a female-looking monster about 160 centimeters tall. The protagonist observes and says that in that case, they could even carry the body out without dismantling it. Park replies that's exactly why it's uncomfortable to deal with that type of creature, and asks why he's distracted. Kim says it's nothing but thinks something is off. The version of the creature he knows isn't particularly dangerous as long as one is alert to its fast movements, so it shouldn't be hard to defeat. He starts wondering if Min had difficulty against that kind of monster. 10 years earlier, Min was rank B, and even if she wasn't exceptional, a hunter of that level is still considered strong. If not for her injury, she would have had the potential to reach rank S, and her sword skills at the time were even superior to his. Despite being difficult to deal with, she was extremely capable and shouldn't have trouble with a blue dungeon boss. Park calls his attention again, asking if he plans to stand there while he carries everything alone. Jun says he was just thinking about something, reflecting that this no longer has anything to do with him and that he probably won't see her again. Even so, he notices some sword marks and begins to suspect whether those could have been caused by her. Later, Kim yawns and realizes it's already 5 in the morning, believing he only slept 2 hours. He reflects that he's been unlucky for 3 consecutive days and that even when he was a hunter, he never had such a heavy routine. Sang complains that if it's going to be like this, they should only be called after the job is done, asking when this will end. Park says he doesn't know either and that it's not the first time this has happened. So if they're delayed, there's not much they can do. Sang retorts that they should at least consider those who are waiting. The protagonist thinks that more than an hour has passed since the scheduled time, so the irritation is understandable. A voice comments that he looks tired, and it's Mun. Kim says he is and asks about her. Mun, visibly exhausted, says she's always been very energetic. Jun asks if she's really okay and suggests she take it easy. Park then announces that they're finally coming out. Sang, irritated, says it's been an hour and a half, and the protagonist realizes that this is happening again, thinking about how there are so many dungeons and so many hunters, yet they keep running into each other. Then Min appears. The two stare at each other in silence for a moment, until she walks past and asks why he's blocking the way. Kim calls her a rude brat. Jun looks at her hand and remembers the previous monster's body, wondering if he should tell her something, but quickly dismisses the idea, questioning why he would care, since just thinking about the past irritates him. In his memory, Min is in the hospital and he goes to visit her. She asks if he came and Kim confirms, asking how she is. He notices she doesn't even get up, and Jun comments that it hasn't been long since the surgery, so she hasn't fully recovered yet. The protagonist questions how someone who uses a sword could ignore muscle inflammation to the point of letting her body deteriorate like that, saying she should have trained her left hand more since relying entirely on her right arm is what ended up destroying her shoulder. Min asks why he didn't say that earlier, and Kim fires back, asking what kind of tone that is, saying he's saying this because he regrets letting the situation get to that point. He concludes that in that state, she can no longer be a hunter. Jun then hands her a document and says she has to retire, explaining that the association's decision is unanimous. Min looks at the paper in silence while the protagonist continues, saying that if she forces even normal activities, it will already be difficult, let alone continuing as a hunter. Min reacts, asking how he can do that and saying that kind of injury is nothing, reminding him that he knows she has her own reasons for being a hunter. Kim asks what she's talking about and says that with her body in that state, she'll be nothing more than a burden to the team, that the decision has already been made and she just has to accept it. He also adds that she should have told him earlier if she was in pain, asking why she insisted until it became a bigger problem. Min asks if she should really have told him, and Jun says yes, telling her not to pretend he could have guessed on his own. Min fires back, saying she did tell him many times, and that when she mentioned she would request a full examination from the support team, he said there wasn't a single person who didn't feel pain and that she should just get back to work. With tears in her eyes, Min asks whose fault it is that she endured all that for so long, whose fault it is that she's in that state and now he still wants her to retire. The protagonist responds that it makes no sense to blame him, asking if he was the one who destroyed her shoulder, saying she should have taken care of her own body and asking what kind of idiot goes back to work just because someone told them to. With her head down, Min insists she can still do it, that with a few days of therapy she can return. But Kim asks who will do the work during that time and what she could actually do with her shoulder in that condition. He reminds her that she's a swordswoman and says that if she wants to live like a parasite, then she might as well join the cleaning team. Min then asks if he ever saw her as a companion, and quickly says that was a stupid question, since someone like her was nothing more than a disposable tool to him. Jun asks if she finally decided to drop the act, saying he never liked her from the beginning, accusing her of clearly disrespecting a superior, and asking if she sees him as a joke just because he had been tolerant until then. Min says it's true, that she always hated him because he never treated those below him like people, always with that cold look. The protagonist says he doesn't care what she thinks anymore. At that moment, Min slaps him across the face and tells him to be born as a human being in his next life. Back in the present, Kim recalls that and admits to himself that he really was a complete jerk, wondering if she had actually said she was in pain. Joan tries to remember but can't and concludes he probably just told her to stop pretending and get back to work without thinking. Even so, he recognizes that if it weren't for the injury, she would have become an excellent hunter. Watching her now, he notices her hand touching her shoulder and realizes the problem has already started. He comments that it really bothers her, calls out to her, and tells her to increase her grip strength with her left hand. Min, confused, asks what he just said. The protagonist explains that when she holds the sword, she concentrates all her strength in her right hand, which puts too much strain on her shoulder, and that even if she can attack quickly as she is now, her right shoulder will give out soon. Min replies that it's fine and wonders what a mere cleaner would know about that, making it clear from her expression that she doesn't take it seriously. Kim simply turns his back and says it doesn't matter, adding that as an intelligent hunter, she'll figure out what to do and can ask the support team for an examination. Min finds it strange and asks what he's talking about. Later at the hospital, the doctor explains that it could have become a serious problem. Min is surprised to hear this, and the doctor continues saying her shoulder is inflamed. It's not serious for now, but if it had been ignored longer, it could have gotten much worse. He prescribes an anti-inflammatory and emphasizes that the most important thing is correcting her posture. Min asks what he means, and the doctor replies that her overall posture is wrong, recommending that she strengthen her grip with her left hand. Min is even more surprised and immediately remembers the strange cleaner saying almost the exact same thing. At another moment, Jun comments that he's almost dying from exhaustion, while Park says it was a good job. Sang then teases, asking how he manages to do that, and the protagonist, annoyed, asks what he's talking about. Sang replies by asking how he can make his ex-girlfriend wait so long. That's when Kim realizes Min is there, waiting for him. He finds it strange and wonders why, while Park says it's better to give them space. The others say goodbye and joke around and leave. Jun asks what happened and says he's tired, adding that he needs to hurry to catch the last bus. Suddenly, Min presses her sword against his neck and asks how he knew about that, demanding to know who he is. The protagonist is confused, wondering why she's pointing a sword at him. Min insists, asking why he won't answer and emphasizing that she's asking a question. Kim asks what she's talking about, and she says it's about her shoulder, asking if he's going to pretend he knows nothing. Jun realizes she had an exam and tries to dodge, saying he kind of guessed that he saw some things on the internet. Min finds that answer suspicious and says that the technique she uses must be kept strictly confidential, that it can't be leaked, but he clearly knew about the positioning and the muscles involved. The protagonist realizes he put himself in an unnecessary situation, becoming suspicious, since that technique isn't something a simple dungeon cleaner would know. He thinks that if he continues like this, he might end up being reported to the association as a possible spy. So he tries to justify himself, saying he saw sword marks on the monster's body. Min asks about those marks, and Kim explains that among the various cuts, there was a pattern that stood out. The strikes that required strength from the right hand were deep, while the follow-up techniques were shallow, indicating a swordsman with little strength in the left hand. He continues explaining that the boss of that dungeon has high speed as its main trait, but aside from that, it's not such a big threat. A common method to defeat it is to use that speed against it in counterattacks. But there were no signs that this had been done, which doesn't make sense for someone as skilled as her. The conclusion was that her body couldn't keep up with the monster's speed. Min admits that for a moment she felt her shoulder lock, and Jun confirms that under normal conditions the symptoms wouldn't be noticeable, but in fast combat, especially for a swordsman, it becomes obvious. The protagonist thinks that the reason he could give that advice, even without being a swordsman, is simple. He was once the world's first SSS rank. Min then says she suspected that and asks if he's a freelance hunter. Kim finds it absurd and asks what kind of nonsense that is. Min explains that she's heard of freelance hunters in Seoul. Some of them rank A or higher, who don't reveal themselves easily, and only appear in high-risk dungeons, and asks if he belongs to a private guild. Jun denies it, saying he's not a hunter. Min then asks what he is, and the protagonist replies that it's obvious, he's just a cleaner. He says that should be enough, that he has to work the next day and is heading out. As he walks away, he thinks her question was too direct and that if he were a real hunter, he might have tried to take advantage of the situation, but now he's just a dungeon cleaner, so he doubts they'll have any reason to meet again. Min simply thanks him. Kim is surprised and wonders what she just said, unable to believe she actually thanked him. She then excuses herself and leaves. Elsewhere, someone asks if she's really going to take a break so suddenly, and Min says yes. Even the support team thinks it would be good for her to rest. The man questions if it's because of the exam results and says she wants to stop just because her shoulder hurts a little. The operations team captain, Lee Soo-young, who joined last month through personal connections, comments that he never imagined she would consider that. Min replies that she also plans to improve her skills during this time. Lee says that talk about improving skills is nonsense and asks if she's planning to go on a trip with her boyfriend or something. Min says that's not it. The captain then asks what it is, and she says she's going to try to learn some sword techniques. Lee asks if she's going to look for some kind of academy, but Min says no, because it will be private lessons. The captain finds it strange and asks if she met some martial arts master or a boyfriend. Min sighs and says it's a janitor from the dungeon cleaning team. The captain calls it absurd, saying that if she wants to learn swordsmanship, she should look for someone better than a janitor, since she's an active hunter, and that it would be more useful to take some classes at a kendo academy. Min says she'll figure it out herself. Lee then asks if it was that janitor who told her to get the exam, and Min is surprised by the question, remembering the nurse from before. The captain insists and asks what a simple janitor could teach a hunter. Min replies that he didn't even agree to teach anything, that last time she asked herself but was rejected. Irritated, Lee asks if she's joking because the man said he wouldn't teach, and yet she still intends to learn. Min says she'll look for him again until he stops refusing. The captain sighs and says, whatever, she should deal with it herself, but reminds her that a large-scale dungeon will be cleared in a few weeks, and she needs to return before that. Min thanks him, and Lee tells her to leave. After she's gone, the captain comments that the organization is regressing and wonders what a hunter could learn from a janitor, imagining what other teams would think if they found out, especially if the captain of Team 2 heard the story. Just thinking about the cleaning team makes his stomach turn. Then Lee calls someone and asks if the executive director of management is available. The secretary says yes and asks what it's about. The captain tells her to transfer the call immediately, saying there's something he needs to report. A few days later, inside a dungeon, the cleaners are wearing masks, and Sang comments that he thinks June has finally gone crazy. While cleaning, the protagonist thinks that a few days ago a skill was unlocked without him doing anything, and wonders why that happened, since they say the ends justify the means. Park calls him and says he doesn't want to meddle in his personal life, but asks why that person is there. Nearby, Min is cleaning. Kim says he's the one who brought her. Park says that's obvious since he wasn't the one who called her. June then explains that since they don't know when Hwai will return, it might be better to have someone else to help. Park admits that makes sense, but reminds him she's a hunter, and if the association finds out she's cleaning a place like that, it could become a problem. The protagonist thinks he didn't bring her because he wanted to. Before that, Min knelt down and begged him to teach her swordsmanship. At that moment, Kim wondered if she had eaten something bad because what kind of hunter would ask a cleaner for lessons? And he thought it would be annoying, so he came up with a way to get rid of her. That's when he said he might consider it if she helped with the cleaning. Kim was sure a rank B hunter would hate doing a cleaner's job, but Min asked if just helping with cleaning would be enough, which wasn't the reaction he expected. In the present, the protagonist watches her and thinks he really underestimated her. He always thought she had a huge ego, so he never imagined she would accept doing this kind of task without complaining. He wonders how things ended up like this. From Moon's point of view, she keeps looking at the two of them, alternating her gaze between Min and Kim, feeling that there's a strange atmosphere in the air. June thinks he's going crazy because he really underestimated Min and never expected her to actually start following him everywhere. Min calls him teacher and says that spot isn't coming off, but the protagonist tells her he already said not to call him that and asks if she really thought she could clean using only strength. He explains that there's human and monster blood mixed there, and when that happens, you shouldn't try to clean everything at once. First you clean the human blood with a cloth, then deal with the rest using fire. What's stuck there are pieces of monster flesh, so you need to use plenty of product and carefully scrape it off with a dagger, gathering the remains in one place. He also warns that if she uses the dagger, she must clean it immediately because monster blood can corrode the blade. Min says she understands. The protagonist observes her expression and asks what kind of face that is, questioning if she really wants to do that since a hunter shouldn't be doing this kind of work and thinks she should just leave already. Min says no, she was just reflecting on how cleaning is more complex than it seems, and concludes that he really isn't an ordinary person. Park comments that he's become a complete cleaner, and Kim replies that it's nothing, but inside he feels none of this makes sense, wondering what's so good about this situation for him to be almost satisfied when he used to be an SSS rank hunter, and now finds himself proud of being a complete cleaner. He ends up staying silent. Park praises Min, saying she's doing very well for her first time, and she asks if that's true, while Moon watches them silently. Later, Min says she's finished that part and asks what she should do next. Moon calls her to go together and asks if she's okay. Park comments that there are several corpses further ahead and asks if they can handle it. Mun says that if not now, when will she get another chance to work with a hunter? Asking if Min minds. Min says she doesn't, and the two go together. Sang comments that he's betting on the hunter lady and asks what Kim thinks, and the protagonist says he's betting on her too. In another part of the dungeon, Mun starts wondering what she's doing there, since she brought Min on impulse and now doesn't even know what to say, feeling uncomfortable with her own attitude. Min notices her state and asks if she's okay, saying she looks tired. Mun says she's fine, but Min says she doesn't believe her. Moon then admits she hasn't been sleeping well lately. Min asks if something is bothering her, but Moon avoids answering and changes the subject, saying she wants to know more about Min, since it's her first time talking to a hunter. Min says there's nothing special to tell, she just followed her father's footsteps and became a hunter. Mun asks if her father was also a hunter and if they worked together. Min says no, he was fired because of a shoulder injury. After a superior told him to stop pretending to be sick and work properly, his colleagues started pressuring him constantly, and he endured the pain out of fear of being a burden, which only made the injury worse. Mun is shocked and asks how they could do something like that. Min says that in the association, there are no colleagues, only people above or below you. Her father was rank B when he was fired, and no one cares about a middle-aged hunter at that level because he was just a replaceable tool. She concludes that the entire association works like that, a place where hierarchy defines everything, being extremely harsh with the weak and submissive to the strong. She says she saw the same behavior among the hunters she worked with, but that the cleaning team is completely different. The two fall silent for a moment. Then Min suddenly asks if Moon is interested in the teacher. Moon gets embarrassed and asks if it looks like that. Min says anyone would notice. Moon awkwardly tries to explain that he's good at his job and has a sense of responsibility, that on the first day he did nothing and on the second he arrived late, so she thought he would quit. But now he works more than anyone. Besides, he knows dungeons and monsters like no one else, being even more useful than the control team's information, and knows things that aren't even in the records. Min thinks that Man is clearly not an ordinary cleaner, because just by observing marks on a corpse, he was able to deduce the condition of whoever fought there, and that he knows more about dungeons and monsters than the control team itself, which is reason enough not to let him slip away. Even so, she tells Moon not to worry because she's not interested in him that way. Moon then asks why she follows him all day. Min replies that, as she said, the association is a place where the weak are crushed and the strong are flattered, a pattern she can't stand. That's why she needs to become stronger, and for that, she needs his help. Moon asks if Min is saying she's not his ex-girlfriend, and Min is completely confused by the question. At that moment, Sang comments that they're coming back. Min notes that there's always someone like that, someone trying to hit on her, and Mun says she's been through that before while the protagonist watches the two and wonders how they got so close so quickly. Park then gathers everyone and reminds them that, as he said before, the boss of that dungeon is a monster with deadly poison, saying he believes everyone will be fine, but they need to be extra careful. He explains that as long as there's no direct skin contact, there's no immediate danger, so they don't need to panic, but still must stay highly alert. Then he notices Mun is different and asks if something is wrong since she's much slower than usual. Moon says the protective suit is uncomfortable, especially that day, and that the gas mask is also making it hard to breathe, but she believes it won't affect her work. Sang comments that it's long past time to replace the equipment and suggests asking the association for a budget increase, warning that if they continue like this, an accident could happen. Park says he's tried before, but always gets the same answer that there's no money. Sang complains that they're worked to the bone while the money is kept stored away. Park ends the discussion and tells everyone to go in, saying they'll have to manage with the current equipment. The door opens and the boss appears, a giant slime. Park reinforces that no one should touch its skin. The protagonist observes and thinks that although it looks like a normal slime, its poison is extremely lethal, and prolonged contact causes poisoning with a limit of only 5 minutes. And inside that dungeon, there is no possible cure. They need to be even more careful than usual. While working, Kim and Sang are dismantling parts of the monster, and Park asks if they're okay. Both say yes. He also checks on Min, who says she's fine. When he asks Moon and touches her shoulder, she collapses to the ground. Park panics, picks her up, and tells her to wake up. The others notice she's in terrible condition. Sang suspects her air purifier is faulty and notices the protective suit is torn. Park orders everyone to leave immediately, to take her outside and call the support team. The protagonist thinks he should have warned her to be more careful, but now it's too late, because it's impossible for the support team to arrive in time within the 5 minutes before the poison takes full effect. He remembers that slime poisoning causes intense pain throughout the body and quickly leads to death. Sang, irritated, yells at him to move. The protagonist then calls Min and tells her to grab the sword. Min asks what he intends to do. Park also questions it, and Sang threatens that if anything happens to Mun, he won't let it slide. June insists there's no time and tells her to grab the sword immediately, saying it's not difficult, just a quick cut. Min refuses, saying she can't do that and there must be another way. The protagonist clarifies that it's not to cut Mun, but to cut him. Park realizes Mun is getting worse quickly, and Kim insists that Min make the cut fast. Without fully understanding, she agrees and summons the sword. The system notifies the activation of an acquired skill. Kim tries to stop her, saying it wasn't to use a skill, but Min has already executed the strike, injuring him. The system detects an attack directed at the user and assumes a combat stance. The protagonist feels intense pain but ignores it, saying he'll go ahead carrying Moon to the support team and meet them there. Park protests, saying he's injured and that the hospital is at least 30 minutes away. Suddenly, an energy surrounds Kim and he bursts forward at high speed with Moon in his arms, activating the skill Hyper Boost. As he runs, he thinks he needs to hurry because only 3 minutes remain. At the hospital, Park repeatedly thanks him. The doctor comments that the situation was extremely dangerous, but they arrived in time and now they can check her condition. Park keeps thanking him. The doctor then asks who is responsible, and the protagonist says it was him. The doctor says that before leaving, he should go to reception to register the points, and Kim realizes he receives rewards for that. Inside the room, Mun wakes up and everyone looks at her. Park, still worried, asks if she likes making everyone panic and says that if something was wrong, she should have said so earlier. Moon apologizes. Sang asks how long that equipment had been in use for the protective suit and air purifier to be in that state, and Park scolds him for swearing in the hospital. Sang argues, asking if it makes sense not to swear in a situation like that, saying that using the same equipment for over a year has gone too far, and that if a hunter complains, everything is replaced immediately while they are ignored, asking if he said anything wrong. He also emphasizes that he's not blaming the hunters. Min intervenes, saying it's fine. Park tells Mun to see this as an opportunity to rest and says he'll handle the workplace accident. Mun, confused, asks what he means, and Park explains that she got injured while working and should stop worrying about it. Moon then asks where Kim is going, and the protagonist says he's going to get some fresh air. As he leaves, Kim thinks the accident happened because of the old equipment and wonders if everything turned out better than he expected. The system then notifies a condition for unlocking related to increasing the dungeon cleaning team's budget. June realizes that was the perfect opportunity to pressure the association, using the accident as a trigger, since for the sake of their image, they would have no choice but to offer support. He thinks that if he can unlock this condition as well, he'll already have 2 active skills, and at this pace, it won't take long to get out of that life as a cleaner. Back in the room, Mun comments that Woo didn't seem well and asks if something is wrong. Park says he's probably angry. Mun asks if it's because she caused trouble, but Park says no, explaining that he got hurt and, despite seeming explosive, he cares a lot about his teammates, something that's easy to notice. Min, reflecting, thinks he takes care of others to the point of risking his own body and that there's a lot to learn from him. Sang comments that the more he observes Woo, the stranger he seems. Mun asks why, and Sang recalls that he saved her using a skill, something unusual for someone from the cleaning team. Mun is surprised to hear that and regrets not having had the chance to thank him. Park then asks Min what she thinks of him as a hunter. Min says she's not sure, that he seems like a good person and that his face is her ideal type. Park corrects her, saying he wants her opinion as a hunter. Min gets embarrassed for a moment but understands the question. Park says it's a waste for him to be just a cleaner because he knows combat techniques in dungeons and more about monsters than many hunters. Min asks if he's suggesting Kim should join the operations team. Park confirms, saying it would be difficult but beneficial for him. Min agrees, saying he's far above average hunters in terms of experience and knowledge, but the problem is that he's in the cleaning team. Sang reacts, saying that was too harsh, and asks what's wrong with being in the cleaning team, questioning if she's saying he can't grow there. Min denies it and says it's actually the opposite. Sang doesn't understand, so she explains that not even she, as a rank B hunter, can measure his true level of skill. And yet he chose to remain in the cleaning team instead of going to operations, which means that choice was intentional. Park asks if she's saying he wanted that job. Min says yes because she sees no other plausible reason. Park asks why someone would choose such a tough job, and Min says it's just a guess. But she believes he has extraordinary abilities and chose not to get involved in the association's hierarchy, preferring the camaraderie of the cleaning team. Hearing this, the 3 team members are surprised by the idea of camaraderie. Park concludes that if that is really his intention, he won't insist on the idea of changing departments anymore. Sang comments that if he thinks that highly of them, he might have gone to complain about the accident to the association. Min says that's not impossible. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the protagonist stands before someone important, the director of the Seoul unit, Seo Cheol, who asks who he is. Kim replies that he's just a cleaner. The director then asks if he came to request a budget increase for the cleaning team, and Jun confirms. Seo remains silent, tapping his fingers on the table, while the protagonist thinks that he is the highest authority of the Seoul branch and that, back then, he built his power through connections, accumulating enormous influence within the association. The director says that if that's the case, he should take it up with the administration department, but Kim pushes back, asking what kind of hunter would go around eliminating monsters one by one, saying it's enough to deal with the boss and be done with it. Seo asks if he's a hunter, and Jun replies that he's not, that he's a janitor. The director then questions whether a mere janitor came to him personally to request a budget increase without even going through the captain, just some random employee. The protagonist confirms that's exactly the case. Seo laughs and says that must be due to his age, talking without even informing himself first, and asks exactly what the cleaning team would need more money for, since the costs aren't even that high. Kim replies that that's precisely why he's asking for an increase, because the current budget doesn't even cover those basic costs. The director laughs even more and says he's got nerve, that he had been ignoring that behavior until now, but this has crossed the line. Jun then explains that there was an accident, that the equipment was old and there was no budget to replace it, and even so they kept working, until one of the protective suits tore, the gas mask failed, and a team member ended up exposed to monster poison. Seo says he didn't receive any report, and the protagonist replies that it's because it just happened. The director wonders where such confidence comes from for someone to speak like that, and Kim says he understands that he wants to save money at the expense of the cleaning team, but he shouldn't allow accidents to happen. Seo coldly replies that it's unfortunate, but headquarters has no money. Jun asks if he's really saying there's no money, and Seo confirms, asking what he knows about the association situation, also commenting that he seems new there. The protagonist smiles and says maybe he is, but he knows the annual budget of the supernatural subjugation department is in the tens of billions, and about 70% of that goes to the operations team. Seo is surprised and asks how he knows that. Kim continues saying they can't even use it all in a year, and in the end, the remainder is spent on commemorative or coalition operations. So he's just asking them to share a small portion with those who really need it. The director asks again who he is, and Jun repeats that he's just a janitor. Then he says that as branch director, he should think about his own position, asking how long he's been in the role. Seo replies that it's been 2 months. The protagonist comments that he must have struggled a lot to get there, so he should at least do a good job, asking if he doesn't think so. He adds that the cleaning team is already known for being mistreated and questions what the association's image would look like if citizens found out an accident happened due to lack of budget for basic equipment. The director asks if he's threatening him, and Kim replies that he's not, just stating facts. Seo then sighs and says he understands, asking how much he wants to increase the budget. Jun replies that any increase will do, since the important thing is that it goes up, and then says the conversation is over and he's leaving. Seo stops him and asks if he knows Hunter Min. The protagonist finds the question strange and asks why. The director replies that it seems so, that he'll review the request and get in touch, dismissing him. Kim leaves, wondering why Min was mentioned. As soon as the door closes, Seo picks up the phone, calls someone, and says that man is not just a simple janitor. On the other side, the captain answers, and Seo comments that the guy looks like the idiot he had mentioned before, the one Min said she was teaching. The captain gets irritated and asks how some random janitor would dare to speak to him directly. Seo says that man is not an ordinary janitor. The captain asks then what he is, and the director replies he doesn't know, but based on the information he has, he must have some connection to the association. He comments that the man proposed increasing the cleaning team's budget, but believes that's not the real objective. Lee says that regardless, he's now just a member of the cleaning team and came at a good time, since he was planning to teach him a lesson. Seo agrees and tells him to teach him to respect his superiors. The next day, Park holds a document and asks what that is. On the paper is a notice of disciplinary action. Sang gets furious and says not even compensation would be enough, questioning how they can apply such punishment, saying it makes no sense at all. Min is also surprised by the situation. Park says the reason for the disciplinary action against the two is violation of the prohibition of multiple jobs, claiming that accumulated fatigue was considered the cause of the accident. Sang is outraged, saying they barely earn anything and are still treated like this. Park continues and informs that the request for workplace accident compensation was denied, claiming personal negligence and stating there is no evidence that the equipment, gas mask, or protective suit were worn out. The protagonist thinks Seo really decided to act that way. Mun tries to calm things down, saying not to worry because she's fine. Kim doesn't understand her reaction. Mun adds that even though it's disciplinary action, it's just a warning and she didn't expect anything different anyway. Jun is confused and thinks the real issue is unlocking his ability. Sang comments that he started seeing Kim differently after what happened. The protagonist asks what he's talking about, and Sang replies that he heard Kim practically threw himself into danger for them and even went to the director, saying he already thought he was a bit crazy, but now he's sure he's a complete psychopath. Park agrees and says that despite everything, he expressed his intentions well. Kim internally understands nothing and wonders what kind of distorted thoughts they have about him. Park then tells them to consider his good heart and keep working hard, asking the girl not to overdo it. Mun says she's already better. Sang comments they should just quit that job altogether. The protagonist thinks everything is strange. He didn't ask for an absurd amount nor tried to sue the association, and yet they're reacting extremely just because someone has more than one job. He wonders what the real reason behind the superior's attitude is. Min then suggests it might be her fault. The protagonist asks what she means, and Min explains that when she requested leave, she mentioned the cleaning team to the captain, and since he's old-fashioned, he might have seen it negatively and decided to teach them a lesson because of it. Kim asks the captain's name, and Min replies it's Lee, the captain of the first control team, asking if he knows him. Jun recalls that Lee is an influential figure who got the position through connections without much merit. Sang says that's not surprising. The protagonist then calls Park and says he's taking the day off. In Seoul at Samseong Station, a couple walks calmly while deciding where to have lunch, until an explosion occurs and lightning appears, indicating a dungeon has spawned. They panic and say they need to inform the association immediately. The protagonist, wearing a cap and mask, watches from afar and thinks it's been a while since last time, wondering if he should show a bit of his abilities. Inside the dungeon, monsters advance and surround Kim. He grips his weapon and activates a skill while the system informs that his movement speed will increase drastically in combat. The protagonist advances and defeats the enemies with ease. He thinks that dungeon interception is the act of clearing a dungeon secretly without the association's authorization, before the official team arrives. Something common among freelance hunters seeking money, although extremely dangerous. He comments it's been a while since the last time and he still can't fully control his strength. He also reflects that normally a hunter would need to act quickly and without information, which makes the mortality rate high, but for him, that's not a problem. He estimates the operations team will arrive in about 15 minutes and decides to finish everything before that. Even though it's a simple dungeon that would take less than 10 minutes when he was still the world's #1, the situation is different now because without defensive abilities, a single mistake could be fatal. Still, he manages to advance quickly because he has faced that dungeon before, being the 4th boss. He attacks and hits the weak point while the system informs that damage will increase drastically. Another blow is delivered and a huge explosion occurs. Kim mentally lists the dungeons he has cleared that day, including the metallic boar, succubus, demonic soul, and ant dimension, concluding he completed 4 dungeons in a single day. He compares it to the operations team standard, which usually clears 3 or 4 per week, and concludes he's not doing badly, although profit is lower due to low-level dungeons. As he leaves, he sees several association vehicles gathered, indicating an emergency since 4 dungeons were cleared without them knowing by whom. 2 guys complain about having to stand guard on their day off, calling the freelancer trash and saying they want to see what happens when he gets caught. The protagonist passes by them and thinks that if discovered, at minimum he'll be fired, but with luck, maybe he'll get away with a fine, since no one would even consider that it was the work of a mere janitor. He estimates the hunters will arrive soon and decides to stop there, thinking he'd also like to see their reaction when they realize what happened. After 2 days off, it's Kim himself who has a shocked expression. Lee appears and Park asks what he's doing there. The captain replies it's just a field visit. Jun finds it strange and wonders if he already found something. Lee says sometimes it's necessary to interact with other teams to strengthen camaraderie and asks if they don't agree. The protagonist thinks that's a ridiculous excuse since he clearly doesn't care about the cleaning team. The captain tells them not to worry about him and to work normally. Kim is suspicious, finding it strange that the operations team captain appeared right then, and starts to suspect he may be trying to confirm whether he was responsible for the interception. Park asks if they should start, saying he'll bring masks and protective suits. Lee refuses, saying he doesn't need them since he'll just observe from afar. Park comments the work will take some time and asks how long they have. Sang replies about an hour, enough if they hurry. June notes there's still time and asks about the product concentration. Min asks if there are still chemicals available. The protagonist replies they should adjust to 60%, explaining the flesh is already rigid and more force will be needed to clean, and also to bring a new mop. Park asks about gas levels, and Moon replies it's at 150 micrograms per square meter, indicating accelerated decomposition. Kim instructs that if anyone has finished cleaning, they should help dismantle the corpses. Sang says he still can't because the corridor is full of blood and needs to be cleaned again. Lee observes everything and begins to suspect, thinking they might be pretending to be busy because of his presence, and considers testing the situation. He then brings up the recent dungeon interception. June realizes Min still thinks he might be a hunter, and understands that if they connect his absence to the interception, everyone will become suspicious. He realizes Lee is probing and concludes the situation is dangerous. Min comments that the buzz among hunters must be huge. Lee replies that yes, they are investigating, but it's not easy to find the culprit, and therefore there will be a considerable reward for whoever captures him. Min becomes interested and asks about the reward. Lee explains that a hunter who captures the culprit will receive extra points in the ranking evaluation, and if another team does it, there could be personnel transfers. In other words, if the cleaning team captures the culprit, they could be promoted to another team. He also suggests that if anyone knows someone suspicious or who has disappeared in recent days, they should report it. June realizes it's a direct move and thinks in that case whoever acts faster has the advantage. He acknowledges Lee may have gotten his position through influence, but he's not stupid. Park calls Woo and asks if he's better, remembering he got hurt the previous day. Mun confirms, saying it's a good thing it was yesterday and not with the captain present. Sang agrees and jokes he already expected something like that when he started singing while working. Park comments he relaxed after receiving some praise and says it's a shame, because the team transfer proposal was interesting, but unfortunately they didn't find anyone suspicious. Sang says if he finds someone suspicious, he'll report immediately. Lee observes and wonders if everyone there has gone crazy with that job. Min just smiles. Elsewhere, Lee calls Seo and says he's sure he found the culprit, stating that janitor is responsible for the interception, since the activity stopped as soon as he returned to work. Seo calmly replies that they just need to increase the cleaning team's budget. Lee is confused and asks what he means, saying there's enough proof and they should punish him, asking if he intends to ignore all of this. Seo replies they may have messed with the wrong person, The janitor is not ordinary and hints that something more important is at stake. Elsewhere, a child says that Man is very hurt, and the mother tells him to be quiet so no one hears them. It's the protagonist, thinking that since he can't get the budget, he'll create one. The director repeats they should just increase the cleaning team's budget. Lee asks what he's talking about and says the reasons are obvious, so they should discipline him. The CO replies they just received an anonymous donation to the support fund, also in the name of the cleaning team, worth 20 million wons. It's not a large amount, but he heard it's roughly what was intercepted. Lee asks if that doesn't make it even clearer, saying that right after the interception, a similar amount was deposited for the cleaning team. The director replies that makes it an even bigger problem because it only confirms the culprit further. A dungeon cleaner who did an interception, asking if that makes sense. The captain asks what he means. CO asks if he had the ability to do interceptions, would he stay in the cleaning team, saying that if it were him, he never would. When you have the strength to rise, who would want to keep doing dirty work? Lee agrees. The director then says that's not all, there was something strange from the beginning. He went straight to him to ask for a budget increase and knew everything about the association. CO says he's 100% sure there's something in the cleaning team that shouldn't be there, and that janitor is undoubtedly someone from within the association, but seems to be connected to someone powerful, for example, the association president. And he also knows the president doesn't like him much. Lee thinks it's no surprise that that's why his colleagues covered for him, and he's sure they knew he's connected to the president, wondering why he didn't think of that before. CO says it seems like a warning that they are being watched, so they'd better do their jobs properly because, as he knows, there's no telling what might happen if he falls. He thinks they made a mistake. Elsewhere, a voice says everyone did a great job. The protagonist thinks that fortunately it seems the interception case was handled. Now what's left is for the support fund deposit to be reflected in the budget. Then they notice several boxes. Kim asks what that is, and Sang asks if the boss ordered something like that. Park says no. When they start opening the boxes, they realize they are protective suits, gas masks, gloves, products, everything packed. Park asks if headquarters sent that. June thinks it seems it worked. Park says there's an official letter. The protagonist thinks it probably says it was sent by an anonymous supporter, although it seems like too much for just 20 million wons. Park then reads 200 million. Even Kim is shocked and wonders if it's really 200 million, and Sang asks why they're so surprised, telling him to show it too. Jun thinks that's 10 times more than he deposited. The paper says that after careful review by the association, it was decided that equipment deterioration caused by lack of budget had a serious effect on the accident, and therefore headquarters decided to provide an additional budget, even if the increase is small. Mun asks about the budget increase. The paper also says they express deep regret and send an apology to her, along with a small compensation. Moon is shocked to realize it's 100 million wons as workplace accident compensation, and then says it was Wu who did that. The protagonist replies it wasn't him. Sang asks what he did, and Kim repeats it wasn't him. Park pats his shoulder and says the association changed its decision, something he has never seen in all his time working there. Jun asks if they also find it strange and says it's impossible for headquarters to change position and release that much money. Park replies it's also written in the letter they made another decision, so they just need to know that. They don't need to know who did what. The protagonist is completely confused. Park says they need to take everything to the office and asks if, since they were delivering everything to them, they couldn't have left it there. Kim asks if they also have an office, and Park says of course it's just useless. Min asks where the office is and says she'll help carry everything so they can go. Park says they'll take everything together. Min asks if it's okay for the teacher, and the protagonist asks if he didn't already say she can't leave. The system notifies that the condition for unlocking has been met. With the increase in the cleaning team's budget, the acquired skill Hellfire has been unlocked. Kim thinks that with this, another ability has been released, and there's not much time left until he can say goodbye to the cleaning team himself. Min asks if he wasn't the one who did the interception in the last 2 days. Jun replies asking what she would do if he said yes. Min tells him not to worry and asks if he really thinks she would attack him just to gain a few extra points. She continues saying the monetary reward and the cleaning team support fund came from the amount he got from the interception. The protagonist asks if she already knew. Min replies she's sure the cleaning team members also know, but since that would put everyone in a delicate situation, they are being careful about what they say. Kim thinks he's been found out and wonders how, since he believed he had been careful. Min says she has heard that no matter how much a talented person tries to hide their abilities, they always end up being visible to others. She says his skill level is too high to remain hidden, even if he wants, and says that somehow he managed to get away this time, but next time he will gradually start to stand out within the association. If that happens, it will be difficult for him to remain in the cleaning team. Joan wonders if that's really so and thinks that Guy must be talking to the higher-ups and planning to send him to the operations team. He also thinks he never imagined the day would come when he would accept her there and even receive a reward for it, and that he will finally be able to escape that infernal cleaning team. A box falls. Min asks if he doesn't want to stay in the cleaning team. The protagonist doesn't understand, and Min says she will help him so he can stay in the cleaning team forever. She admits that, of course, a mere rank B hunter won't help much. But if she becomes a rank A hunter, she will be able to help him stay in the cleaning team. Kim, irritated, wonders if she's joking. The interception case ended that way, but soon after another incident happens, and Jun asks what's going on. On the wall were several offensive nicknames against them. When they entered to clean the dungeon, the place was a complete mess. There were insults written with monster blood everywhere, and monster bodies were deliberately scattered. Mun says that's too much, and Sang replies they need to go after them because this isn't right. The protagonist says that even if they go, it's pointless, because if they pretend innocence, there will be no way to prove anything, so they should just ignore it and move on. Sang asks if he's really saying to let it go, after seeing all that, and questions if he's not angry. Kim replies that if they don't react, they will stop, and thinks that based on circumstantial evidence, the operations team hunters were responsible. He would love to go after them right then, but he needs to avoid conflicts with the operations team to continue unlocking his abilities. In the end, he believes this immaturity will end in a few days. That's what he thought, but even after 3 days, it didn't stop, and the cleaners just kept cleaning. Mun asks why they're doing that. Sang says this isn't right and that they need to confront the operations team. Park replies he already went a few times and intended to speak with their captain, but he left on a business trip for a few days, and it happened exactly as Wu said. They just denied everything. Sang says then the only option is to talk to the hunter. Jun tells him to forget it. Sang asks if he's really saying to ignore it until now, and the protagonist replies no one should talk to anyone else because he himself will handle it. They shouldn't clean that place. Sang says there goes the psychopath again. Mun asks where he's going, while Kim thinks that's really hunter behavior, doing that for 3 days straight. More importantly, the system notifies the acquired passive skill, OCD passive activation. They have irritated him too much. Jun walks off thinking he's had enough, and on top of everything, they still make him work 15 hours a day. A door opens, and it's the protagonist entering, thinking that, thanks to those bastards, he missed the last train. The secretary welcomes him to the Seoul branch headquarters and asks how she can help. Kim pushes the guards and tells them to get out of his way. One of them asks who that bastard is and if he really dared to hit a hunter, saying he should stop right there. Jun thinks he will end it that day, and it all started because of what happened 3 days ago. The hunters comment about the rotten smell, saying that as soon as he entered, that disgusting smell took over the place. They also say it seems someone who is not from the cleaning team decided to show up in front of them and ask, first of all, why he doesn't know his place, messing with another team's budget. They say he should just clean, stay quiet, and be ashamed of it, and that if they were him, they would prefer a part-time job. Sang gets angry, and Min asks what team they are from. The two guys arrogantly reply, asking how that girl dares to talk like that and tell her to leave while they are still being polite. Min repeats the question, demanding to know what team they are from. The two ask if she would even understand if they answered and what exactly she wants until they realize who she is. Immediately, they kneel and greet her, saying they are sorry for not recognizing her. Min asks why they are apologizing now and says she herself didn't know they were from her team. She states that before apologizing for not recognizing her, they should apologize for acting like animals, and then asks if the two cleaners are okay. Sang and Mun say yes. Min comments that there are always people like that among rookies, those who think they are something just because they became hunters, when in reality they are nothing more than rank E, and ends by saying she regrets that. Mun says it's fine while the two hunters watch in silence, clearly irritated. Park arrives, greets everyone, and comments that she showed up again, asking if they should start working. Min replies no, that she just came to say goodbye that day, saying she learned a lot during that time. Park says it was nothing, and then sincerely thanks her for all the help she gave during that period. The protagonist watches and thinks it's only been a week since she started working there, but she seems to have fully understood the routine and weight of that job. Min then says that actually she is the one who should be thankful for having met such good people. Moon gets emotional and asks her to come visit them from time to time. Kim watches everything silently, wondering how they became so close in such a short time. Everyone is sad about her departure except him, because he was the one who told her to leave. Before that, June had made it clear that she should not come back starting the next day. Upon hearing that, Min was surprised for a moment but quickly understood the meaning. The protagonist concludes that by telling her not to come back, he was actually fulfilling her own wish. After that, based on his knowledge of the future, the protagonist creates a dungeon attack schedule for Min to follow. If she keeps up that pace, she could reach A rank in just half a year. He knows that in his current situation, he can't rebuild the same career he had in his past life, so he decides to shape her into one of the best hunters and use her as a bargaining chip with the association. June thinks that in his previous life, she was already treated as a disposable tool and feels that even now, deep down, she still ends up being used the same way. Min calls him and sincerely thanks him, saying she knows he may never need it, but if he ever does, he can call her anytime. In the present, Min leaves the cleaning team. and the very next day another problem arises. Two hunters laugh while talking about the janitor who showed up the day before, saying that the more they think about it, the funnier it gets, especially when he asks them to take care of the cleaning team, questioning how such an insignificant group dares to interfere with the hunter's budget. Suddenly, one of them screams after being hit by a direct punch from the protagonist, who knocks him to the ground. Kim takes a fighting stance and activates his ability. The other hunter, irritated, says that janitor doesn't know his place. He activates necromancy and declares that this will be the protagonist's end. The necromancer tries to attack him, but Jun easily dodges. The hunter threatens to finish him right there. Kim counterattacks and says it's ridiculous, asking if he really dared to use skills against him. Both hunters end up on the ground. The protagonist stares at them and asks if it was fun doing those childish things, spreading filth and laughing behind people's backs. He adds that it proves they weren't raised as real hunters, since they use skills outside dungeons and against ordinary people. One of them tries to react, saying he thinks he can beat a hunter and get away with it. Jun raises his hand and interrupts, asking how an E rank has the nerve to face him like that. The hunter gets scared, and the protagonist comments that he's too much of a coward to be called a hunter. Kim grabs his face and tells him to listen carefully, that from now on the cleaning team will no longer clean the dungeons he clears, and that he'll expose everything to the media, asking if he thinks his career will remain smooth after that. The hunter argues that the association will side with him, but Kim responds that no one will protect an insignificant E rank, and that if he wants to keep working, he should go to the cleaning team and apologize on his knees. Otherwise, he should drop his badge and survive alone in a dungeon. At that moment, Lee appears and asks what's going on. Everyone turns, surprised. The protagonist questions it, since he should be traveling and knows being caught there could complicate things. Lee asks the reason for the commotion, and Kim replies by asking what his deal is. The captain mentions the budget sent earlier and asks if it wasn't enough. Kim explains that those hunters were causing problems in the dungeons, spreading corpses and smearing sangui on the walls, and that he came to check if there were any complaints against the cleaning team. One of the hunters tries to defend himself, saying it's a lie, and that he was attacked for no reason. But Lee slaps him and asks who he thinks he is to speak like that, saying he'll apologize in his place. The protagonist says it's fine and only asks them to be more careful from now on, saying he's leaving. Lee tells him to be careful as well, and Kim adds that it would be better if they avoided crossing his path in the future. The conflict ends there, but a question lingers about Lee's sudden change in attitude. Later, Jun asks Min if she has any idea what might have happened, but she says she also took the week off and doesn't know anything specific. Still, she comments that those guys were pathetic, since they were only E rank. The protagonist agrees, saying that despite that, they apologized properly, and he resolved the situation for good, so there shouldn't be any more problems. Min concludes that even if they wanted to cause trouble again, they won't be able to, because those two were already fired. Kim is surprised and wonders if they were fired because of what he said, if it's really possible they made such a decision because of a mere janitor, and starts suspecting that change in attitude wasn't a coincidence. The next day, the entire cleaning team is shocked to see hunters bowing, thanking them for their work and wishing them good morning before even entering the dungeons. The protagonist observes this and comments that they also did a good job, noticing that this behavior continues for several days. Whenever they arrive to clean, the hunters have already gathered the monster bodies in one place and left the boss room organized. Mun says she still can't get used to it, and Park comments that for the first time in 10 years, the operations team is truly respecting their work. Sang jokes, asking if that means they're now better than the hunters, but Park scolds him, telling him not to get cocky because it's just their job, and everything happened thanks to Woo's effort. Sang says he was just joking and acknowledges how much he's done for the team. Mun says she's happy he's with them, but also worried. The protagonist finds it strange and asks what she means. Moon says he might end up getting hurt because of them. Kim doesn't understand and asks how that would happen. Min explains that now that he's drawn attention, some hunter might start targeting him. Kim replies that if someone is angry, he doesn't think it'll be a problem. Moon asks if he's sure and says he didn't do anything wrong. Sang comments that even so, everything is strange since he went straight to the director to ask for a budget increase, bypassed the hunters, and now the operations team is watching closely, asking if maybe he's the real reason behind all of this, as if he were someone important that even the higher-ups can't touch. The protagonist is surprised and starts laughing, telling everyone to stop joking and get back to work. Sang, annoyed, asks what he's laughing at. Elsewhere, Lee is clearly bothered, and someone comments that now he's keeping an eye on the cleaning team, saying they even assigned an operations squad to monitor them. It's Lim Dong-bin, leader of Operations Team 2. Lee says he doesn't know anything and tells him to be quiet, stating that he knows exactly what he's doing with the cleaning team. Lim provokes him, asking if the president is aware of this and mentioning that rumors are circulating, advising him not to do anything, because if Lee were more competent, he wouldn't have to worry about this kind of issue and would already have a higher position. Lee gets irritated and tells him to leave if he's done. Lim says he can leave it to him and that he'll take care of that janitor who's overstepping. Lee asks what he plans to do, and Lim says it's nothing much, just what's necessary. and that not even the president could cover up a serious mistake. Lee asks what the cleaning team did wrong, and Lim replies, nothing yet, but that could change. Lee realizes that Man is planning something dangerous and gets internally irritated, knowing Lim is the type who steals others' work and takes all the credit. Lim continues telling Lee to think carefully, asking if he plans to spend his whole life taking care of the cleaning team, reminding him he's the leader of an operations team. Lee directly asks what he wants. Lim says he learns fast and explains that next week, there will be a multiple dungeon in Yeongdongpo, a type where another dungeon opens right after defeating the first boss, drastically increasing difficulty since you can't leave until everything is cleared. These operations usually require about a month of preparation. Lim says to leave it to him, and Lee asks if that isn't too much even for him. But Lim replies that in any case, the director has already approved it and ends by saying they'll talk later. Lee reflects that although he can't directly deal with the cleaning team, letting Lim handle it might remove a problem from his hands, as long as it doesn't backfire on him. Lim then adds that he should relax, saying he's a reasonable guy, but mentions he heard about a rising hunter on his team named Min, and asks Lee to hand her over as well. Lee wonders where Lim heard that and tells him to go talk to her himself. Meanwhile, on the bus, the protagonist looks at the system and thinks that the situation is now completely different from when he returned in time. Things are flowing better, and unlocking skills is getting easier. He remembers that no one has wanted to join the cleaning team for months, and concludes there must be a reason behind it. New notifications appear indicating that one of the unlocked conditions is working with other teams. Kim reflects that in the past this would be impossible, but with the current situation of the operations team it might be feasible, though still difficult for now, so he decides that for the moment, increasing public interest in the cleaning team might be a better path. At that moment, Min calls him. June asks if something happened, and she says they'll participate in a multiple dungeon and that she was chosen as the operation leader. The protagonist finds it strange, wondering if that already happened back then, and asks if there's anything else, commenting that if she was chosen as leader, her value as a hunter is increasing. Min says that's not the most important part because the cleaning team will also be part of the operation. In the building, hunters complain that salaries have dropped and now they still have to share the work, blaming the cleaning team, saying they've become too important and can't even be confronted. Moon asks if everything is okay and Park says yes, while the hunters keep provoking, saying even dogs know when to stay quiet. The protagonist observes and thinks they all seem to be B rank, and that dungeon would be easy even for a C rank, questioning if that means they're all weak. He asks if that really is a multiple dungeon and why Team 1 wasn't called. Min confirms that before this type of operation was Team 1's responsibility, but the project was handed to Team 2. Jun finds it odd, saying something of that level should have been planned months in advance. Min says there was a meeting between leaders, but she doesn't know the details. Soon after, Lim arrives and greets everyone, announcing that his team will be responsible for the Yeongdongpo operation. The protagonist immediately recognizes him and thinks that Man has always been known for stealing others' work within the association. They exchange looks, and Kim feels the discomfort. Min asks what's wrong, and Jun replies she should stay away from that guy because he's human trash. Lim then explains the operation should last 24 hours and no one can leave the multiple dungeon until all bosses are defeated. He says anyone who doesn't want to participate should say so in advance, and starts detailing the plan. The group will be divided into 3 teams to speed things up, because if they take too long, monsters will release more gas, affecting everyone. Cleaning Team 3 will handle the gas inside the dungeon. Since it's a large operation, there will be bonuses, and he asks if the cleaning team can keep up. Park says yes. The protagonist thinks it's an excellent opportunity, since working with the operations team would make things easier, give bonuses, and help unlock more skills. He knows chances like this rarely come for someone from the cleaning team. Even so, he decides to refuse. Lim is surprised, and Kim thinks he'll never help someone like him, even if it costs him dearly. Later, Sang questions the refusal, saying opportunities like that are rare and he still turned it down even with bonuses, asking if he's scared. Min asks Park what he thinks, and Park says maybe Kim is worried about their well-being. Min agrees, saying the operation is extremely dangerous with 24 hours of continuous combat and hundreds of monsters. Park says knowing that, they shouldn't ignore his concern and they'll also refuse to participate. Mun says Woo is really considerate and Sang admits he almost misunderstood, thinking he was running away out of fear. Park concludes he has a good heart and the team decides not to participate. Min says she thinks it's better to withdraw as well and Moon immediately questions it, saying she can't do that since she's the operation leader. Park agrees, saying he almost forgot that detail, but Min says it's fine, admitting she was even excited about the idea, but recognizes she's not good enough yet to lead, and besides, she can't fail in front of her own teacher, so in moments like this, it's best to follow what she was taught. Park agrees with her decision. Later, in the building, Lee laughs remembering the cleaning team refused and thinks Lim is a complete idiot, imagining his face, provoking him by saying he shouldn't mess with him and that he understood that long ago. Lim tells him to leave if he's done, but Lee keeps provoking, asking if Team 2 lost that time and if even Min rejected him. Irritated, Lim tells him to shut up, but Lee keeps laughing and suggests he hire a freelance hunter, saying that would cost at least 200 million won. Furious, Lim slams the table and declares that's enough, saying he'll use the director's authority to create a mandatory participation list. This type of list is used in emergency operations and forces those called to participate, under risk of severe punishment or even expulsion from the association. Lim questions how they dared to irritate him like that. A few days later, the protagonist finds out Lim really created the list and everyone was forced to participate. In front of the dungeon, a crowd gathers, since a dungeon of that scale naturally attracts media attention. Sang comments about having to give interviews and Park jokes he should have shaved to look better, while Mun says she should have washed her hair. The protagonist looks at Min and asks if that's really the posture of an operation leader, asking if she's scared. Min says no, just nervous since it's her first time at that level. Jun says even so, she needs to look confident, because if hunters show insecurity, citizens also get nervous, so she must adjust her posture and I can't hesitate inside the dungeon. Min says she'll do better in practice. The protagonist then advises that once they enter, she should focus on clearing the dungeon and not worry too much about the team. Min says even so, he should keep the radio on. Kim jokingly asks if she plans to call him for help all the time. Min just smiles. A voice comments that if anyone wants to die, they should say it beforehand. Park then gathers the group and checks if everyone has their equipment and first aid kits. Kim says they have hydrogen peroxide, diluted hydrochloric acid, and 10 liters of saline solution. Moon adds she brought a vacuum compressor and herbs, and Sang says he has plenty of food and water. Park praises the preparation and reminds them it will be a tough operation, but they should proceed as always, entering with determination. Around them, some people mock the cleaning team, calling them useless and asking what they're doing there. At that moment, Lim arrives and announces that the cleaning team and leader Min wish everyone good luck. Min responds politely. Moon is surprised to see she's also participating, thinking as leader she would stay out. The protagonist explains that's not always the case, since in some situations, strong leaders also participate directly. Moon asks if Min is really that strong, and Kim confirms, thinking she does have the ability to lead. But the real reason Lim isn't taking leadership is that he simply doesn't know how to run an operation and prefers to just watch while taking credit. Lim says he'll be supervising everything and tells them not to be nervous since it's their first time under his leadership, saying any problem should be reported. Min agrees, and Lim finds her attitude strange. Then he turns to the cleaning team, warning them not to slow the hunters down. The protagonist says they'll do their best. Lim thinks he'll soon see how long they can keep that attitude and says that since everyone is ready, Min can give instructions. She agrees and explains again they'll be divided into teams A, B, and C, with Team A acting first, B next, and finally C, advancing in that order. She then adds that the cleaning team will accompany them, that they already know how dungeons work, so there's no need to worry, but since this is a very dangerous dungeon, they should ask the cleaning team for help if needed. The hunters are confused hearing that, and the protagonist thinks what the hell she just said. Lim laughs and says the leader must be very nervous to say something like that, since it sounded like she was telling the operations team to ask the cleaning team for help. Min then says they'll check everything once more before entering, and that once everything is ready, they'll begin the operation. Shortly after, in front of the dungeon, the cleaning team also prepares to enter. Inside, they start cleaning the area and cutting up monster parts. Mun says she was a bit scared, but now it even seems easy. Kim replies they're just cleaning like in any other dungeon and might not even run into the hunters there. Sang says he wanted to see them fight because it doesn't even make sense entering together if they can't see their work. Park asks if he's a hunter and says there's no point trying to keep up since that's not their job. Now that they've finished dissecting the monsters, they'll clean the rest. And since the gas can't spread until the operation ends, they need to gather the monster parts and put them in vacuum-sealed plastic bags. Sang says he doesn't need to keep repeating that, and Park says they must be patient because since it's a joint operation, they need to be careful. The protagonist thinks that normally they would gather the bodies in one place and burn them, but since this is a real-time operation, that's not possible, so they need to prevent decomposition by cutting monsters into pieces and placing everything and chemicals inside vacuum-sealed bags. Sang says it's disgusting working like that. Kim thinks they're almost done, and Sang asks when they'll eat. Park says it hasn't even been that long and asks if he's already talking about food. Mun asks who wants a snack. Sang is surprised and asks where she got that from, and Moon says she brought some chocolate bars just in case. She offers one to Woo and even says to forget it since he doesn't like being interrupted while working, but Jun says he wants the strawberry flavor. They eat, and Park says he feels much better now and that they'll do their best. The protagonist thinks this is their first big job, but in the end, they're doing the same as always, so there's no problem, just act normally. 8 hours later, the hunters' work was still easy, but the cleaning team's situation was very different. After 10 hours, they started getting tired. After 15 hours, Sang dozed off and injured his hand, though it wasn't serious. one of the monster meat bags burst and Kim became increasingly exhausted trying to deal with it. The gap between the cleaning team and the hunters only kept growing, and after 18 hours inside the dungeon, a voice comes over the radio saying, "The dungeon gas seems to have increased and the cleaning team should assess the situation." Park apologizes and says they fell behind because there was too much work in that area. The voice asks which zone they're in, and Park says Zone 5. On the other side, they say they've already advanced to Zone 10 and ask how they're still in 5. Park apologizes again and says they'll take a 1-hour break before trying to move as fast as possible. The operations team reacts saying he's crazy, that the gap is only getting bigger, and asks if he still wants a break. June takes the radio from Park and says everyone is exhausted, so it's impossible to keep advancing for now, and they should ask the leader for a pause. The operations team replies that's not possible, that the cleaning team will only slow them down. The protagonist asks if they really want them to continue in that condition and says, it's impossible to advance like this. The other side says that's the cleaning team's problem and they should deal with it themselves. Mun says he's cruel, and Kim tells them to send some hunters who aren't doing anything, because if they get help, they can move faster. The hunters reply asking if they look like janitors. Jun gets irritated and tells them to hand the radio to their boss right now. Lim asks what they think they are doing and whether he did not already say they should handle it themselves. He keeps saying the gas is spreading and that instead of standing around, they should be cleaning, then asks what the hell they think they are doing and tells them to get back to work right now. The protagonist asks about the operation leader and Lim fires back, asking why he wants to know that and whether they think they are there to play around. He says he has already warned them several times not to delay the hunters' work. Kim replies that they have been working for 18 straight hours and asks if he thinks they are cleaning machines, saying everything has its limits. Lim asks if he no longer wants to work and says that little piece of trash thinks he has some kind of authority there, that the entire plant is going down the drain because of the cleaning team, and that the hunters worked for weeks to enter that dungeon, so they can forget about the bonus. Kim asks what exactly they did wrong, and Lim replies that they neglected their duty, failed to follow instructions, and strayed from the operation during subjugation. He tells them to listen carefully and says that since it is their first time in an operation like this, they probably do not know anything. But this is not something he can let slide, and he emphasizes that Kim is responsible for the cleaning team's actions. Then he notices the protagonist laughing and asks if he has gone insane. Jun, still laughing, replies that he thought it was strange, because Lim went to the trouble of setting up a mandatory participation list, so this must have been planned from the start. He says the guy wanted to drag everyone there just to impose a bunch of punishments, and asks if that does not make him a complete bastard. He keeps going, saying they do not even understand how the cleaning team's work is done, and yet they want to ignore everything, trample over their work, and punish them for no reason, while also trying to give orders without even being the real operation leader. Lim, furious, asks what he just said and says he must be relying on someone's power to act that way, but that if he abandons the operation, not even the association president will be able to protect him. The protagonist answers that then he can say the cleaning team abandoned the operation, and asks what Lim intends to do after that if the gas will keep spreading and he is still going to continue the operation. Lim, holding the radio, says it is him and asks if the operation leader is busy. Meanwhile, Min is standing before a huge monster and replies that she is a little busy, asking why he called her out of nowhere. Lim says a problem came up, that the cleaning team abandoned the operation, that everyone is going to suffocate from the gas, so she should forget about being the leader because from now on, he is the one in command. Min asks what he means by that. Lim, irritated, says that is not an operation worthy of someone like her to lead. The protagonist hears that and thinks he has not changed at all. Lim asks what he's talking about, and Min hears the teacher's voice, then asks if it is true that the cleaning team abandoned the operation. Kim replies that maybe she cannot do anything now and asks if she really wants to lose her life there. Min does not fully understand, but at that moment they finish defeating the monster, though everyone is exhausted. Lim presses her again, asking what she is doing and demanding that she hand over leadership to him immediately. He asks if she really wants to die there and says he was the one who allowed someone like her to become leader, so does she really think she can order him around now? Min replies that she understands, but instead of handing leadership to Lim, she says she is transferring the operation to the janitor Wu. She declares that from that moment on, he will be the operation leader, officially receiving that role from Cleaning Team 3. Everyone is outraged. The protagonist thinks it has been a long time since something like this happened, and then says that from now on, he himself will lead the operation, because he is now the leader of that mission. The place falls silent for a moment. Then Lim smiles and says that at most he is the leader of janitors, asking since when someone like him could lead an operation like this. He says there was a misunderstanding and that in truth the operation leader is him, making it clear that someone like Kim cannot lead anything there. The protagonist replies by asking how a piece of trash like him can, saying Lim keeps talking all the time about ranks and positions, but acts as if he does not know how to lead an operation. Lim asks if he is a hunter. June shoots back, asking why everyone keeps insisting on that question and whether it really matters. Liam replies that of course it matters because janitors are responsible for the field. Everyone there is between life and finalization, and this is not something that will end with just a disciplinary action. The protagonist then asks if Lim is suggesting leaving everything in the hands of an experienced hunter like him, instead of a clueless fool who does not know what he is doing. Lim tells him to hand over leadership right now, saying that if he does, maybe the cleaning team will get off with only a disciplinary action. Kim says whether the cleaning team gets disciplined or not depends on him, but more than that, every time he looks at Lim's face now, he remembers the past, and that makes him feel like shit. Then he asks if Lim feels good being like this, because in the time since he came back, he's been getting better every day. Lim asks what that means, and June, wrapped in an absurd aura, replies that from now on he is not doing anything else, because he is out of the operation. Lim does not like that at all because being removed from the operation is the highest level disciplinary action, depriving a person of any participation or benefits during subjugation. Lim continues to stare in shock, and the protagonist tells him to shut his mouth before he attracts flies, asking if this is his first time being disciplined. Kim then takes the radio and says it is him from Cleaning Team 3, officially reporting the disciplinary action. From this moment on, Lim is out of the operation and they will do their best. As everyone should know, Hunter Min transferred leadership to him, so from now on, everyone must follow his instructions. First of all, teams B and C, who have been doing nothing, will help the cleaning team. The hunters do not like that at all and say they did not become hunters just to go around cleaning. Jun replies that he understands, and therefore, from now on, teams B and C are also out of the operation for lack of cooperation. The hunters are indignant. The protagonist then calls Team A on the radio, and Min responds that Team A is listening. Kim asks if she can hear him clearly, and the hunter replies yes. June says they are short on personnel now, so they will need to work harder. She is in Area 11, where there is a bear-type beast. The protagonist explains that whenever they attack this bear, it becomes immune to attacks for about 10 minutes. So they should form up with someone from the Guardian class in front and ask the healer to focus on buffs for that defender. When the immunity ends, the bear will probably jump at the Guardian, and if a monster like that gains momentum from behind, it will deal a lot of damage and also get tired, so that will be the moment to retreat and attack. He asks if that all makes sense. Min says yes, and Kim tells them to do exactly as he said and follow the plan. One hunter says he is buffing her. The bear opens its huge mouth and prepares to attack, but the hunter blocks the blow and Min, taking an attack stance with counterattack activated, hits the bear squarely. The beast lets out a loud roar and Min looks back and says they cleared Area 11. The hunters are stunned and do not understand anything, and the protagonist says they did well. From now on, it will take 50 minutes to finish that dungeon. He continues guiding them, saying that in Area 12 there will be a ghost-type monster, so physical attacks will not work. The swordswoman should stay in the rear, while the mages should use fire magic against it. The next one will be hallucinogenic, so the healer needs to purify everyone, not letting them force distance from the monsters, and they must keep attacking. The hunters who are not doing anything wonder if that guy is really just a janitor. Kim tells them to keep trapping the monsters in one place and then attack all at once. A voice replies that is impossible, and June asks why it would be impossible. One of them answers over the radio that everyone is tired and does not have enough mana, and their physical condition is already terrible. The protagonist asks what kind of hunters they are if they cannot handle a few little monsters, and tells them to hold their positions and try not to lose their lives. Meanwhile, Min fights a stone monster and thinks that creature is very strange, very different from the one she defeated before. She thinks the monster is too durable and, despite its size, also quite fast. The stone monster grabs her leg and pulls, throwing her to the ground. The smoke clears, and Min appears injured. Someone approaches, and it is June, extending a hand to her. Min says she could not do it and that she does not seem all that strong. The protagonist replies that he is extending his hand because he wants the sword. A hunter helps Min stand up, and Kim takes the sword thinking that this is a stone giant. Of course, there would be a red rank monster there, but it is only a little more complicated to deal with. Then he activates the skill newly unlocked thanks to that operation. Skill activation, excessive immersion, increases the effect of any skill the user activates. The stone man advances with a clenched fist toward him, but Kim, with a single move, destroys the monster's hand into pieces. Then he blocks another attack and counterattacks. The stone monster emits a deep sound. A massive impact occurs, and the creature is paralyzed, while June remains untouched. Then he activates the piercing skill, which increases damage by 3,000% when attacking the enemy's weak points, and that effect is further amplified by more than 3,000% when using excessive immersion. Excessive immersion is activated together with piercing and counterattack, resulting in an extremely powerful blow, and a devastating explosion completely destroys the stone giant. One of the hunters, completely shocked, asks who the hell that guy is, and Min replies that he should already know, saying he is just a janitor. The hunter refuses to accept that and asks where the hell that looks like janitor work, questioning whether they should not investigate him immediately. Min then tells them to keep secret what they just saw, explaining that money, honor, power, hunter status, or weapons mean absolutely nothing to him. At that moment, the system emits a notification indicating the activation of a passive effect, tuberculosis symptoms caused by excessive use of power, which deeply irritates the protagonist when he realizes the cost of his own performance. Sometime later, the news reports that team leader Lim was expelled from the large-scale Yongdong-po operation, and there are reports that he had blackmailed association members with promises of bonuses. Seeing that, the director is furious and demands an explanation, asking what he did to get expelled from one of the most important operations ever carried out. Lim tries to justify himself, saying that everything happened because of Min and the janitor who were working together, but the director immediately pushes back, asking if he really intends to invent excuses to get out of it, and reminding him that everyone knows he tried to steal Min's credit. Lim tries to react, saying he cannot take all the blame alone, and that it was the director himself who approved the mandatory participation list, but Seo loses his patience, grabs him by the hair, and asks if he thinks they are friends, making it clear he will not let this pass now that the media knows everything. He tells Lim to leave immediately and prepare for a suspension, and under pressure, Lim has no choice but to withdraw. After that, Seo speaks with Lee about the situation and asks what he thinks about promoting Min to team leader. Meanwhile, the consequences begin to appear. Lim and the members of Operations Team 2 are disciplined, and Lim is demoted in rank, something that for a hunter is practically career destruction. At another time, Moon congratulates Min on the achievement. Park comments that she has finally been recognized as the excellent hunter she always was, and asks whether they can still walk with her normally now that she is a leader of an operations team. Min, visibly emotional, thanks everyone, trying to hide it by saying she is not crying, that something just got in her eye, and admits everything happened too fast for her to warn them ahead of time. Mun jokes, asking if she is the boss now, and Sang replies that yes, she now holds the same level as Lee, being the leader of an operations team. Min tries to downplay that, saying that despite the position, she is still far below in experience, and notices the office is strange, asking how many people left. She discovers that 17 members were removed, practically more than half the team, which makes her wonder if that is why they put her in charge. Kim reacts by saying being too humble is annoying, reminding her that not just anyone takes on that kind of position, and that she should have more pride. Min thanks him while he thinks that in his past life, even he himself could not become a leader before 30. Min then says all of this is thanks to the teacher and that even though she is a leader now, she will always be on his team, which makes the protagonist immediately warn her never to say that in front of her own subordinates, explaining that nobody would respect a leader who shows that kind of dependence, especially considering that many were expelled because of him. At that moment, 3 hunters enter the place, commenting that the support team will be late and that they are hungry, but when they notice the cleaning team's presence, they completely change their attitude, bowing and greeting them respectfully. Hong introduces himself, saying it is an honor to meet them, and Jin Ho also introduces himself and says he must be Wu, praising his performance in the last operation and saying they can treat them as part of the same team, offering help whenever needed. Jun watches that and asks what is wrong with them, while Min comments that now they are reliable and that nobody will mess with the cleaning team so easily anymore, saying that in this way, the professor can just relax and keep cleaning however he wants. The protagonist, observing the situation, concludes that the real source of all that craziness is precisely the new team leader. Later, a voice comments that it is almost time for that person to arrive, and Kim asks who it is this time, so Min explains that the support team said an assistant will be arriving today. June understands and thinks she has truly become a respectable leader since exclusive assistants are only assigned to operations team leaders, something he himself also had when he was at his peak. At that moment, the protagonist's eyes widen as he remembers that in his past life, his assistant was Lee Young, the only one who was with him on the day he lost his life, and also the one who spent the most time by his side. He thinks that by this time, she must already be working at the association, and asks Min if she knows the assistant's name, but she says not yet. Kim decides to leave it alone since he has nothing to say to her, and in any case, she would not recognize him in this timeline. Park comments that they need to leave before the visitor arrives, but Min says that is not necessary, though Park insists they need to go work. When Jun opens the door, he ends up face-to-face with a woman who introduces herself as Song Hye-yeon from the support team, the new assistant to the leader, and the protagonist immediately realizes she is not the person he expected. Min welcomes her and asks her to come in, and Song apologizes, saying she is still getting used to the job. Park says they are going to be late and the group leaves, while Kim watches Hye-yeon and confirms to himself that she really is not the person he had in mind. Back in the building, Hye comments that she is exhausted and complains that it has barely been 2 months since she joined, and she was already thrown in as an assistant. At that moment, Deputy Manager Lee Young appears and asks if the problem is that the boss is not like she expected, confirming that she was assigned to Min, leader of Operations Team 2, that almost got dissolved. Song replies that Min is a good person, but thinks the director does not care much about her. And Lee Young explains that being out of CO's line of sight means exactly that she is doing a good job. She also comments that she heard the leader has a good relationship with the janitor, who supposedly has the association president's backing, and asks whether Song knows him, advising that if she is smart, she should get close to him. Song replies that she already ran into him and did not like him at all, thinking he was hot-headed and intimidating, even saying he seemed like someone from a gang because of the scar on his nose and probably never had a girlfriend. Lee Young counters that he has been working hard for the cleaning team, managed to increase the budget, and dealt with the hunters who disrespected the team, but Song still refuses to believe it, saying all of that must just be reputation and that, when a bigger problem comes up, he will run away from responsibility. Lee Young is intrigued by that and comments that now she is curious to know what kind of person he really is. Elsewhere, Kim spends the day scratching his ear and wonders who is talking about him behind his back. Back in the dungeon, he tells them to say where they are going and that he's going to start cleaning, when Min approaches saying she will help. June finds that odd and asks if she should not be taking care of her own work, but she replies that this is also work. The protagonist comments that the newest team leader is there cleaning dungeons, and that her subordinates must be loving it. Meanwhile, the hunters also start helping, asking how they should dissect the monsters. Sang complains about the sticky stuff on the floor, Park explains the procedure, Moon calls someone to help with disinfection, and in the end, the hunters take over the work, saying that now Operations Team 2 and Cleaning Team 3 are practically one and the same. Jun watches that and simply gives up on questioning it. Later, still in the same place, he asks what the real reason is for them being there, saying he does not believe they came just to help with the cleaning. Min then admits that she is having trouble putting together the month's operations plan. Kim tells her to explain better, and Min says the team needs to complete a quota of 50 dungeons, but with the current number of members, that seems impossible. Jun agrees, saying they really received too many dungeons for the number of people available. Min adds that the blue-grade dungeons will not count toward the quota, and the protagonist immediately replies that that is complete nonsense. The headquarters distributes lower-class dungeons randomly, and for the association that does not matter, as long as the mission is completed, so lower-class dungeons also count toward the quota, yes. A dungeon like that can be cleared with 3 or 4 people, so based on that, they can split the members into 3 teams and clear dungeons twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. If the team members are having trouble, they can still rely on the support team. Min says she had not thought of that, and Kim thinks that some people spend 10 years as team leaders without knowing how to do anything right, so what would a novice leader know? Min thanks him and says she always owes him, but June replies that it is fine, and if she already solved what she needed, then she should leave, because he still needs to finish the cleaning. Min asks if he feels uncomfortable around her, and the protagonist replies that it's not her, it's actually that person right over there. Min asks if they already knew each other before, and Kim fires back, asking what she is talking about since the first time he saw her was in the office the day before. Min replies that from her perspective, he has been staring too much since yesterday, and she even thought he might be his ex-girlfriend. June asks if she wants to lose her life. At that moment, Song approaches and says Min needs to attend the general operations meeting right away. Min asks if there is not still enough time until then, comments that they could eat first, and tells Song to go ahead and reserve a restaurant, since cell phones do not work inside the dungeon. Song replies that she will reserve a table for 9 people, including the cleaning team, and runs off. The protagonist asks if she knows you can make calls from there, and Min replies that she does, but she needed to talk to him. Then she asks if he knows anyone on the support team. Kim says no and asks why. Min says she received a call from someone on the support team, and that person said they wanted to meet him, but asked to keep it secret from Miss Hai. June asks what that person wants and thinks it is strange for someone from the support team to look for him, wondering if they want to keep an eye on him because of the mess with the operations team, or if they just want to warn him not to mess with the support team. Still, he concludes there is no reason to look for him in person, just for that, and tells them to say he will meet them when he is free. Park says they finished cleaning earlier thanks to the hunters' help and thanks them for it. They reply that it was nothing, and Min announces that she will pay for everyone's lunch to celebrate her promotion. Park asks if they can really go, and Ji says their leader is the best. The next day, inside the dungeon, a little boy asks where his brother is because he is scared. A voice tells him to look, and on the floor, a woman crawls, asking for help. The boy asks if she is okay, but the woman, with a dark appearance, approaches more and more with a frightening smile, making the boy start crying in fear. Then, the latest news is announced, saying that around 12:30 p.m., an elementary school boy accidentally entered a dungeon and was attacked by a monster. Fortunately, he was not seriously injured and is under observation in the hospital. Witnesses say there were no barriers protecting the dungeon entrance. Min comments that dungeons should never be accessible to the public. The director asks who does not know that and why they did not place barriers, saying that is basic, and asking whether everyone heard him. The protagonist thinks that, fortunately, they found the boy when they were already leaving work. But if they had arrived a few minutes later, that child could have died. Then Seo asks, before the situation gets even worse, who the idiot was who made that mistake. Kim replies that it was his fault, saying he meant to place the barrier but forgot and went out to eat. Min reacts immediately, asking what he is talking about, and says she is sure the professor put up that barrier. Joan tells her to lower her voice, reminding her they are in front of the director. Seo then asks if the mistake was the cleaning team's fault, but the protagonist replies, no, it is not the cleaning team's fault, it is his fault. The director asks if he is really saying he will take full responsibility for the accident, and wants to know what the hell he is thinking, because there is no benefit in taking blame for something like that. Kim replies that there is no benefit at all, he is only telling the truth, and says that the next day, if the director can reserve a place for him, he will personally take responsibility for his own mistake. Seo says he understands, informs him that the conference is set for 9 in the morning, and that with such a major accident, it is impossible to avoid disciplinary action. Then he ends the conversation and says they can go. They leave the room, and Min immediately asks what he is doing, saying she saw with her own eyes that he put up that barrier and knows he is taking the blame to protect the cleaning team, but that is ridiculous. She continues saying that even without the barrier, it makes no sense for a child to get into a dungeon so easily, much less for there to be an active monster in a place that had already been completely cleared, stating with certainty that this was staged and asking why he needs to take responsibility for something that is clearly not his fault. Jun replies calmly, asking what exactly she intends to do, and says that even assuming all of it was staged, does she have any quick way to find the culprit and make him confess? Because whoever managed to set something like that up is not an ordinary person. He concludes that there is no way to uncover the truth before tomorrow's conference, and tells her to stay quiet for now, saying he will handle it himself. In his thoughts, he reinforces that this was definitely planned, since a live monster should not exist in that dungeon, especially after everything had already been subdued, remembering also that he nearly died there himself, and he wonders what the point of that is now. At that moment, the system emits a notification about polymorph, indicating as the unlock condition an increase in public interest in the cleaning team, and the protagonist realizes he is close to unlocking another skill. Meanwhile, Min remains in the room, clearly upset, thinking this is not right, that someone deliberately removed the barrier, and begins questioning every point of the situation, from how a child entered by accident to the fact that he entered just before the dungeon disappeared, as well as the presence of a remaining monster in a place that had already been cleaned. She concludes that someone within the association must be behind it, but feels powerless because she cannot do anything but watch. Covering her face with her hand, she shows frustration, while some hunters approach and say they already heard what happened, saying they also think it is strange and asking whether Wu really plans to take all the blame alone. They say they need to find the real culprit, remembering that he helped them in the last dungeon, and that now it is only fair to return the favor. Min calls everyone, falls silent for a moment, then stands up determined and announces that all operations are suspended from that moment on, declaring that Operations Team 2 will focus on finding the real responsible party. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.